like there's one seat missing. Okay. Everybody ready? Ready? Is it 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get to speak? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education. It's meeting. It's Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, 7 p.m. Give us the roll call, Queen.
Miss Miriam, Miss Yagaloff,
Present.
Mr. Gagnon,
Here.
Miss Hers,
Here.
Mr. Weiner,
Here.
Miss Bleich,
Here.
Mr. Goldman,
Here.
Kayla Jaw,
Here.
Bridget Feeney.
Here. Kayla, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we have no revision to the agenda order, and we're going to start with our public communications. Comments tonight can be from the public on agenda and non-agenda items. You'll have 3 minutes per person. Persons commenting on agenda items can be permitted to comment first, and board members don't respond to comments. That's just our policy. But we are listening and taking notes and thinking about what you're saying. Thanks. First up, we have Greg Collins. Is that? Yep. Thanks. And can you just, when you come up, say your name and tell us where you're from?
Yeah, my name is Greg Collins, and I'm from South Highland Street, originally from outside Boston. Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk. I have 3 minutes. All right, I'll just time myself. So I am here today just to express my concern over some of the language that is used on the West Hartford Public School website. I exchanged emails with the superintendent about this in September, I believe, and we exchanged a couple of emails, but I haven't heard back since. So I'm here to follow up and to just voice my concerns. I know I'm not the only parent to do so, and I'm increasingly conscious of this language because I have 3 daughters, one a baby, 2 are in Wedding Lane schools, 1 is in 2nd grade, and the other's in kindergarten. And so on the West Hartford Public School website, I noticed language maybe stemming from the George Floyd incident when it mentions anti-racism initiatives, equity initiatives, teaching cultural consciousness, quote, understanding of one's own cultural identity, bias, prejudices, and experiences of both privileges and marginalization. Gender identity or expression, referring to a person's gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior, whether or not that gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior is different from that traditionally associated with a person's physiology or assigned sex at birth, and so on. And then, in addition, there's additional language I was troubled by when it mentions, this is part of the social emotional learning section, quote, as part of our WHPS commitment to equity and anti-racism, your children will also engage in lessons aligned to the 4 learning for justice, social justice standards, identity, diversity, justice, and action. And so I'm here, before I arrive at a firm judgment about how that language is translated into classrooms, I'm just encouraging, I'm seeking further clarity, as I mentioned to the superintendent in my email, about whether those lessons are being taught in classrooms, at what age, what grade, and how they're being taught. Because that language is loaded, and those phrases and words can mean vastly different things to different people. And oftentimes, in my personal judgment, they can lead to cultural lack of consciousness and cultural lack of appreciation for diversity and variety of perspectives and different backgrounds. And perhaps, at least concretely, on the website, there could be further clarity on how that language is, again, being translated into the classrooms, at what age those lessons are being taught in the classrooms, and whether whether parents have any say in how those lessons are being taught. I know some of these issues have been discussed previously, but again, as the parent of 3 daughters, 2 of whom are growing up in the Wedding Lane school system, otherwise of which we are very satisfied of the educational curriculum being provided there, but I'm more conscious of this language now, and so I just encourage, I just hope that there's further clarity on these, on how these phrases are being taught and translated in classrooms. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. All right, next we have Adrian Trice. Did I say that correctly? Adrian Trice? Okay. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
I'm not on the agenda. I think I probably signed up on the wrong.
It's okay. Go ahead. Yeah, take your 3 minutes.
All right, so good evening. My name is Adrian Trice. I'm a parent of Layla Sky Williamson. She's an 11th grader at Hall High School. So today I'm here to get some clarity better than. So with that being said, I want her to be transferred out of Hall. She's now in Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts in Hartford. So she's taking the classes and she's getting the support she needs. Hall counselor called Greater Hartford Academy and said, take Layla out of that mandatory class. And if you don't, we will fail her in Hall. Layla has been called many names by the administration. I went to the principal. I told them what was going on. They said the teacher would not be fired. No one's getting fired. I tried to talk to the counselor. Our communication wasn't mingling. I said, can I speak to your supervisor? She said, why? I said, because I need to talk to someone else. She refused to give me the name. She just kept on saying, why? So as a parent, I'm getting pushback. So I can imagine how my daughter felt in the school. Nobody really in her school looks like her. So she had to fight harder. But yet and still, every day she pushed harder. My daughter volunteers. She works hard. She's an honor roll student. All her teachers recommend her for AP classes. But yet and still, her counselor refused to put her in the appropriate classes so she can go to college. So as of right now, my daughter's in 11th grade and do not have enough credits to go to college. And I think that's a shame on the administration at Hall High School. And that's it.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, next up, Layla Williamson.
Hi, my name is Layla Sky Williamson. I'm an 11th grader at Hall High School, and I'm also a student at Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts half-day program, where I'm in the musical theater department, and I'm also an open choice student. But here I'm going to talk about the racism and discrimination and harassment that I've endured in the West Hartford public school system. So last year, my theater teacher told me that I will never measure up to anything. I will never have a career in the arts. And everyone in my class, and this is a predominantly white class, is better than me. This situation happened in December of 2025 and was not addressed until May of 2020. Sorry. This situation happened in December of 2024, and it was not addressed until May of 2025 by Hall administration and DEI. And this situation led me to apply to GOT because my theater teacher, after the whole meeting had happened, had said, I'm glad that this experience has helped you. In May of 2025, I spoke to my counselor and assigned vice principal to finalize my schedule for this school year, knowing that I will attend Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts half-day this current school year. And nothing was finalized. And I am not on track for graduation. I do not meet all the required credits. I do not have a financial lit class. And I was basically blocked and lied to by my counselor, as she's told me that financial lit was not offered while I was still at West Hartford Public Schools until 12:15 every day. That was a lie. It was offered. I just had to rearrange my schedule a little bit. So she basically lied to me and told me that it was not offered at all. I also have to take a mandatory class called Audition Prep, which will help me to succeed and become better in musical theater and also pursue it in college. The school has blocked me from taking that and requires a wellness credit of me despite having 4+ hours of tap dance and jazz dance a week combined. And the counselor told,
Layla, did you have more? No, you still have time. Yeah.
The counselor blocked me from taking audition prep at my other school and told me I had to take a wellness credit, another elective dance class that is similar to my jazz class that I currently take at Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts, although it is an elective and it is less intense than my current class. As my mother said, basically all my teachers recommended me for AP next year, my senior year. I've made maximum honors these past few quarters. I was honored from the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority in Hartford for my leadership skills and all of my successes. And I went to Marymount College in New York City to study musical theater this summer. And yet and still I've been blocked by West Hartford Public Schools, not to just to fail. It feels like I'm being set up for failure. No one is helping me or providing me for assistance, and I have been here since kindergarten. And every single year, something has happened and no issues has been resolved and always swept under the rug. But today, regardless of how many times the vision of the graduate is put upon me each year and it's ingrained in my head, the administration at Hall High School fails to follow up and uphold the values that they so wholeheartedly express each and every single year. Because I'm supposed to receive respect, and I'm supposed to feel safe and welcomed at my school, and I do not. And every day I come in thinking, there will be another problem, there's going to be something that is never going to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Layla. All right, next we have Rachel, is it Caffin? Caffin, thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Caffin. I'm a junior at Conard High School, and I believe that block scheduling is a bad idea to put in place for the 2026 to 2027 school year. Course selection is happening from February 4th to 18th, and no one is sure if we're having a block schedule at the moment. We're still expected to pick our classes without knowing what schedule model we'll be using. This is a tough academic decision to make, not to mention the difficulty of changing classes when schedules are set, and we're being asked to make this decision without the information required to make it. We have also noticed that school officials and teachers are still unsure how a block schedule would work in practice. We only started seriously looking into block scheduling in November of 2025, and having it fully implemented next year feels extremely rushed while so many details are still unclear. There would be a major difference in how students pick their classes depending on whether we are on a traditional or block schedule. In block scheduling, one of the main advantages was that students wouldn't have to drop lunch to fit in all the extra classes like you need for graduation requirements. However, in this proposed schedule, students still lose an elective to fit in gym class. For example, in a block schedule, we would have gym every day of the week, on A days, B days, and a skinny Wednesday for the first semester, and then a study hall block or half-year elective every day second semester. This means gym would take the place of an elective for at least half the year. This directly undermines the main purpose of shifting to block scheduling in the first place. In addition, you lose an elective if you take an AP science class. This doesn't just affect a small group of students, it affects anyone trying to take multiple electives, students in the arts, tech, athletes, and students planning their schedules around college credits too. Many students, myself included, have already dropped lunch to take an extra elective, and this change would force us to lose one. For all those reasons, moving to a block schedule in the 2026 to 2027 school year feels rushed and poorly timed with course selections already underway. Students are being asked to make important academic choices without knowing the structure these choices will exist in, and that puts us at a disadvantage from the start. Until the details are clearly worked out and students can make informed decisions about their schedules, it would be unwise to move forward with block scheduling next year. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I hope you'll take my points into consideration. And I know I don't speak for all the students, but many share similar sentiments to mine.
Thank you so much, Rachel. All right. Do we have any other public comments? All right. So, moving on to non-staff communication and reports, we get to hear from our student leaders.
Can I begin? Hold on, let me cough. Sorry, I've been a little under the weather recently. Hello and happy Black History Month from Conard. This week, Conard is celebrating School Counselor Appreciation Week. Our counselors help us with educational and personal issues, and we would be completely lost without them. Next time you see a school counselor, be sure to thank them for all they do. Now, calling all juniors, SAT Academy will be running after school on Wednesdays until March 18th, so make sure to stop by. The sessions lead to the school-wide March 19th SAT test. Students who attend the academy increase their scores by an average of 50 points, which we know means a lot. So make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to stand out. DEN discussions continue to be a success thanks to the student input. Thank you to all students who have participated, sharing their feedbacks and ideas, and we look forward to hearing more from you and others. Now, as for music and arts, congratulations to Conard B. Sharp, who came in 3rd place at the Werburn Invitational. Keep up the good work. On February 11th, during Community, Conard's Chinese students will be participating in the annual Dragon Parade, so make sure to wear red as it is a lucky color. If you're lucky, you might also get a red envelope full of maybe a surprise. On February 13th, Valentine's Day will be the next day, but Conard students will be getting ready to feel the love of the school community at our upcoming pep rally. This February 13th, students will cheer each other on and experience true school spirit. On that same Friday, students will have the opportunity to dance at Conard's Valentine's Day dance. Tickets are currently on sale in the library, and make sure to buy them before they sell out. Thank you to the Student Council for organizing, and we look forward to a great party. From February 9th to 12th, Conard's Junior Class Board will be selling candy grams in the CAF. They will be delivered on the 13th, so if you want to brighten someone's day, make sure to stop by their booth. Last Wednesday, Conard had the opportunity to hear from a student panel on the benefits of block scheduling. It was extremely helpful to hear from students experiencing it, and I want to thank all the participating students and staff for sharing their experiences. For athletics, congratulations to seniors Fiona Campbell and Julian Watson, Conard's 2026 CIAC Scholar Athletes. This award is given by the CT Interscholastic Athletic Conference and is based on academic excellence and athletic participation, along with outstanding school community involvement and good citizenship. We are so glad to see these students get the recognition that they deserve. For our clubs at Conard, Conard's mock trial has moved on to the next round, and will be competing again this February 6th, which is this Friday. We will be rooting for them and can't wait to see what they will achieve. On Thursday, January 29th, like a week ago, Conard students attended the WeHa Youth Leadership Academy, learning about AI's impact on teen mental health, Narcan training, CPR, and the dangers of gambling, a very wide variety of topics. Students learned so much and were each given WeHa Youth Leadership Academy sweatshirts to mark their achievement. Thank you for listening to Conard Updates, and I can't wait to share more with you.
Thank you. All right, Kayla.
Good evening. I'm happy to be back with another report from Hall. Hall has been busy lately with many new and exciting events focusing on community and student achievement. The Titan Award ceremonies, which are taking place on the 5th and 6th, honor students who exemplify the vision of the graduate, including qualities like leadership, perseverance, and collaboration. We are proud to say 18 students will be honored for their contributions. In addition, Titan Talks will be taking place next Wednesday. These talks are available for students to engage in discussions with school administrators around topics improving the school environment. Hall is also hosting student focus groups to strengthen the sense of welcome and belonging within the school. Students are invited to meet in small settings to share their experiences and feelings, running multiple groups across all grade levels. Another event taking place at Hall is our partnership with UConn's Breaking Bias initiative through the Morris and Judy Sarna Breaking Bias and Creating Community program. As part of this work, students will participate in something called empathy interviews over a 2-week period during community lessons. During these interviews, students will speak with one another to gain a deeper understanding of different perspectives and each other. This effort is the first step in a larger series that will take place throughout the year, all focused on building empathy and connection. February also marks a transition into many cultural celebrations at Hall. We will be recognizing Black History Month through school-wide programming, and similar to Conard, in celebration of the Lunar New Year, Chinese language students will showcase their performances with a dragon parade through the hallways next Wednesday. On the same day, Translation Club is holding a multicultural night, an event centered around the celebration of cultural diversity around the world through the help of student presentations and different activities. Last Wednesday, administrators and department supervisors welcomed the parents of our rising ninth graders to the kickoff event meant to support the transition into high school. We are excited to begin welcoming students in the class of 2030. On the athletics front, winter sports are in full swing with swimming, wrestling, and boys basketball all competing in events, and home games are taking place every night. Girls basketball continues its season as well, and overall participation for winter athletics is very strong. Lastly, in the performing arts, Hall is holding its 10-minute plays next Thursday and Friday in the Black Box Theater. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. Such great reports from your schools. You represent really well. I know it's coming up real close to your own graduations, and please start thinking about some feedback that you want to give us too, about our board, about our schools, so that you can leave a nice list of things that we can continue to work on. And thank you both. Are there any other reports or announcements or anything from any other organizations? All right. I'm going to take a point of privilege. I have a little personal statement that I wanted to share about Black History Month, in honor of Black History Month. So I'll do that now. So I'm just going to start with, number one, Happy Black History Month. But we know Black history is our history. It's world history and American history. And I wanted to share a little bit from my own kind of personal story, because that's a part of keeping the history alive, is us as Black people truth-telling and sharing stories. So I had the honor and privilege of going to West Africa a couple years ago, thanks to my amazing husband, and shout out to the loving couple who made it possible for us to legally be married. And that was just 1967. And so I went to West Africa, where my ancestors are from, and it gave me a homecoming that I could have never imagined. I couldn't believe the sense of belonging, confidence, and comfort I felt for the first time in my life, being with my people. I had the opportunity to go to the Elmina slave dungeon castle, and what I experienced changed me forever. As I saw the cells my ancestors were kept in by the hundreds, dying on each other and waiting to walk out the door of no return as they were sold into slavery, never to see their home again. At just Elmina Castle alone, 30,000 of my ancestors were sold per year for 300 years. That's 9 million people. There was another castle called Cape Coast Castle where another 3 million were sold. That's just 2 out of the 40 slave dungeons and castles that existed. I couldn't even tap into that math because those numbers would truly break my spirit. Out of the roughly 10 million that would survive the Middle Passage, about 400,000 were brought here to America. Slavery lasted 250 years. The Jim Crow era lasted another 100 years. Connecticut was one of the first states to have slave ownership in the early 1600s and officially abolished slavery in 1848, becoming the last New England state to do so. The Black population makes up between 10 to 13% of Connecticut, yet makes up 43% of incarcerated people in the state. In 2023, a report done by the Sentencing Project showed a Black child in Connecticut was 17.2 times more likely to be incarcerated than a white child. We know the prison pipeline starts in school, and so those disparities exist in our schools, in the state of Connecticut and in the town of West Hartford. We were doing our work, but we still got a lot of work ahead of us. Connecticut began integrating its school system following the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education. And I'm sharing this information because I want to sober us up a little bit. We say, oh, Connecticut's always leading, but throughout history, we've been forced to do things. We haven't always led, especially when it comes to this issue. So following 1954 Brown v. Board of Education, in 1969, Connecticut passed a law requiring districts to correct racial imbalances, formally starting the state-level push for integration. And then in 1996, we had Sheff v. O'Neill. The Connecticut Supreme Court ruled that the extreme racial isolation of Hartford schools was unconstitutional, leading to the creation of voluntary magnet schools and transfer programs. I'm a Sheff kid, by the way. Because of that case and that program, I was able to be the first in my family on my mother's side to go to college and graduate high school with college credits. During Black History Month, we often look outward toward national figures and historic moments. Tonight, I want to take a moment to honor Black history right here in West Hartford, because it's living, it's breathing, and it's still being written. In the year 2000, Marcia Adele became the first Black woman to graduate from the Connecticut Fire Academy, breaking barriers in a profession that had not historically made space for women or Black women. Some of y'all know Marcia. First Black woman in Connecticut, that was just in 2000, Fire Academy. In 2008, Judy Casperson became the first African American elected to West Hartford Town Council. In 2013, after more than 100 years of the Board of Education's existence, Tammy Exum became the first Black person to serve on the West Hartford Board of Education. Since that historic moment, Carol Banks, Dr. Lorna Thomas Farquharson, and myself have had the honor and the responsibility of carrying that legacy forward. Rosina Haskins was the first person to lead the West Hartford Public Schools Office of Equity and Advancement, and Teresa Rangel has been the second. In 2018, Vernon L. Riddick Jr. became the first Black chief of police in the town of West Hartford. And in 2022, Adrienne Billing-Smith was named Connecticut's Remarkable Woman of the Year, recognized for leadership, service, and impact, and serves as our town's first equity advancement officer. These milestones matter because they remind us of how long barriers existed before they were broken, right here in West Hartford. These people are still alive. We're all right here. Being the first or the only is a tough gig. It can be isolating and empowering all at the same time. It requires resilience, courage, and often a willingness to carry extremely heavy and visible weight. And it also reveals an important truth, that representation alone is not enough. This is why inclusion and belonging matter. This is why selective allyship and anti-Blackness, even when subtle, cannot be ignored. When support is conditional, when voices are only welcome sometimes, or when equity is treated as optional, disparities grow academically, socially, and emotionally, especially for Black students, staff, and families. True belonging requires more than statements. It requires reflection, accountability, and the courage to examine how systems and individuals show up every day. And I'll end with this. The revolution doesn't start on the streets. It doesn't even start at this table. It starts in the mirror. Thank you. All right, moving right along. New business. A motion by LaToya Yagaloff, Miriam Bleich, Jason Gagnon to accept revised policies and bylaws, first reading. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept as a first reading the following revised policies and bylaws, which were reviewed by the Board Policy Subcommittee. Those would be Community Series 1000, Policy 1000, Non-Discrimination, Personnel Series 4000, Policy 4010, Non-Discrimination, Student Series 5000, Policy 5000, Non-Discrimination, Personnel Series 4000, Policy 4100, Family and Medical Leave, Bylaws Series 8000, Bylaw 8141, Official Duties, Chairperson, Bylaw 8142, Official Duties, Vice Chairperson, Bylaw 8143, Official Duties, Secretary. So.
Someone needs to make that motion.
Oh.
I was getting there, Paul.
Sorry.
I move.
I'll second. If I may set it up for you, good evening, everyone. And powerful statement, so thank you, LaToya. I'm standing in this evening for Mr. Duarte, who I know works along Jason, Miriam, LaToya, the three of you on the Policy Subcommittee. Julio is out at a professional learning conference around focused on threat assessments and school safety, and actually I spoke to him just prior to the meeting. Very powerful stuff, but he's passed along some notes. So I don't know how exactly. I'm gonna suggest perhaps voting them perhaps in blocks, but I leave that to you, Madam Chair. But the first three, if I can just give an overview of the first three, and then let any of the policy subcommittee members certainly provide information, and then any questions. center in and all around the non-discrimination policies, broken up the community, the personnel, and the student series. They cover pages 1 to 24 in your board book. And as you can see, if you look, they're actually fairly minor language changes that are passed throughout, but just so that you understand the highlights. During the 2025 legislative session, the state passed updates adding sexual assault victim and human trafficking victim as protected classes under Connecticut's anti-discrimination laws. And so part of this is really just to update that, update those categories under our protected classes. We also updated the location and contact information for the United States Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, given that our Boston office has recently closed. And in addition, the appeal timeline for complaints involving the superintendent or a member of the board has been aligned with the timeline applicable to other respondents as part of that legislative change. Finally, we made a couple of technical revisions throughout, but that's kind of a summary of what those changes are on page 124. I don't know if any of the subcommittee has other comments or if there's any question on those three.
No, I think that's right. I tended to look at both these kind of sections as kind of housekeeping. It was bringing it in line with what the legislature had recently passed, and then I think also updating to the most recent version of the Shipman and Goodwin recommended practices.
If you like, I can go forward, give a description of policy 4100, family and medical leave. That begins on page, Ethan, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So with the exception of adding the two classes, this is primarily cosmetic.
Correct. The other changes, like I said, there's a new contact location for where complaints would be sent to OCR, and then there is a minor change to timeline, to align the timeline for complaints
All right, thank you.
across all groups.
So Shipman is the one that suggested these changes. Is that accurate?
They would, as I understand it, and how it's always worked, is they bring to us, here's the legislative session from the last, year. Yeah. Here's everything that needs to get updated. We tend to do it in tranches to the extent that, it's voluminous, some years more than others. These all kind of went together, so that's why this was all blocked together, and they're very similar changes through each of these policies here. The next one, the bylaws, that was just something that we realized as we were.
Yeah, I knew the bylaws one. There are, very similar changes throughout. There's one area where it, there seems to be a change that removes the words gender identity, pregnancy, or sexual orientation, and just includes sex.
Where is it, Jen?
So I wasn't sure if that is to be consistent with, so there's a instance on page 23, but there's a few others too. It's consistent throughout, so I'm wondering if that is something that happened in the legislature, again on page 10, or I just don't know, that it seems more than just updating, but it could be. So I'm just wondering if this language came from Shipman or if the committee, where did these changes come from, I guess, is my question.
I can defer to folks in the committee, but generally speaking, as Jason said, the language itself comes from the legislature. Shipman interprets the language, provides model policy for us. I'm not aware if there were any deeper conversations in and around that, and I see what you're talking about on page 23.
And page 10. It's a few different places, so I'm guessing, my guess is that this is aligning with legislative changes, but I would just like to know for sure before
So, so this is actually, we had talked about this at the committee and asked that those be kept in. Because the idea was that these were subsumed within a definition up in the prior sections, but we felt that by actually taking them out, we'd be causing more concern to groups who are rightly concerned. And then keeping that language in, while it probably had no legal effect, it definitely had a psychological impact that we would like to maintain that language.
So I'd like to, if it's
Yeah, why don't we just go through and
possible, I can
call out the pages.
ensure that on page 10, I'm noticing there's some line outs, and I see specifically where they are, the second to last line, so that would be included.
On page 7 as well. We can go through page by page, but page 5 crosses out a board policy 4011, prohibition of sex discrimination, including sex-based harassment. So I don't know if that may be a separate
Yeah,
issue.
No, that was also part and parcel with that. So the redlining was supposed to come back in.
I
so,
see.
So long as those were still correct and accurate citations
I
to our
see.
policies.
Okay, so yeah, maybe we just need to take a second look at this before we vote on it today.
So just to be clear, you won't be voting on it today. So this is a first reading, so this is
Oh.
exactly what we want to do, is
Excellent.
identify those.
Perfect timing.
So am I understanding if we go,
Okay,
and I apologize, I wasn't,
that's all right. That's why we're doing this.
At
All
this-
right,
page
so
5
page
is-
5, and then page 7.
so on page 5, just to clarify, what is the requested edit?
Regarding prohibition of sex discrimination, including sex-based harassment.
Okay.
Yeah, that one, instead of citing the
Yeah.
specific policies, it just
Okay.
puts it under the applicable board policy.
Okay. Page 7.
So page 5 is okay.
And then page 7, it says here.
Page 7,
Yeah, board, yep, yes.
Got it.
Yep, okay, perfect.
Just a question for those on the committee. When one of the citations at the end is deleted, is that just because, say, the Public Act has now been incorporated into the statutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Or if it's a statute that's been taken out, it no longer is applicable.
Well, sure, yeah.
But yeah.
I was just thinking more about the Public Acts themselves
Yes.
being, okay.
Yeah.
Right, and then page 10.
Page 10, I'm tracking what you're looking
Yep.
for there.
And then page, maybe not, hold on. Maybe page 12 is okay.
Does it make sense to go back to Shipman and Goodwin and do this offline?
So this comes from Shipman and Goodwin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these relevant notes, what you're looking for. We will bring it back because what happens, just for everyone at the board and listening public, what will happen between the first reading and the second reading, any discussion that the board may have had relative to any changes or anything, or even if there were no changes, gets brought up at the next policy subcommittee meeting. Just, hey, was there anything relevant that we need to discuss? So the answer at that next meeting for this policy set will be yes. These are the relevant discussions. These were the requests on the board. Obviously, for continuity, 3 board members here are all part of this, and they will present an updated second reading that you would then vote on.
Right, I
So-
understand. Well, my comment is
but-
we're making changes here based on what we think it should be.
So and that'll go back and get finalized to a second reading, and at that second reading, if the board is comfortable with kind of both what the subcommittee who's present here tonight, brings back for feedback and what Shipman legally guides you, they'll come up with a revised draft. And then if there's still concerns about it at that second meeting, you would just postpone the vote, table the vote, vote it down, ask for additional, it's very, so from a parliamentary point of view, there's no issues. I just want to make sure we have clarity around what we're looking for so that we can bring that back and to the subcommittee, make sure we're all on the same page. And page 23, I know, is one that's coming up, but I don't know if there are others. Okay, so with that, just for, Madam Chair, for my clarity, page 5 was okay. It just made it more general. So the changes that you're seeking live on
Page 7.
Page 7,
Yep.
page
10.
10, and page
Page
23.
23.
And they're basically parallel changes on each of those 3 pages, so
Yeah.
I have that. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, for any other discussion you want to facilitate around these 3 policies, but I have those notes.
Okay, for sure. Jason and Miriam, you have anything you want to add? Okay, awesome. All right, so first reading, we're not voting on it. We're just.
No, so all we need to do is go on to the next
Oh,
one.
great, okay.
If I may, the next policy is Policy 4100, Family and Medical Leave. And what you'll notice, that begins on page 25 in your board book, and it appears to essentially be a major rewrite. It's an updated Family and Medical Leave Act policy basically to assure full compliance with the revised statutes, and to clearly reflect the expanded employee protections that the state has now enacted. So you can see there's a lot of line outs of old language, there's a lot of blue ink on new language, and other than that, I'll turn it back to members of the subcommittee to provide any other highlights.
I wouldn't call them highlights, but I think that's spot on. I think next year we'll see another same section of this that is all red and blue.
So is this federal or state changes?
I believe these are state changes, but state law has to comply with federal law, so it's a cascading.
Okay.
Not so much in the substance of the policy, but I was curious about the eligibility sentence where it says an employee who has been employed by the board for at least 12 months. And I was thinking back to our discussion around our purview, and the superintendent is our direct person that we employ, but I guess I was confused by that. Like, are we talking about all the teachers? Is what it seems like it's referring to in here. So some clarity on that. I'm not sure if you guys discussed that in the subcommittee or how that works.
I can answer if you want, or you can answer.
My answer would be is we're the contracting entity.
Yeah, so while I'm the one employee that you formally hire, evaluate, et cetera, I then have responsibility, which is obviously delegated, levels down, but to hire all other employees, teachers, custodians, paraeducators, secretarial staff, et cetera. And the Family Leave Act applies, to all employees of the board. And so even though you don't evaluate those individuals, they are all employees of the Board of Education, paid for, their salaries and such come through the Board of Education budget. So that is what it's referring to.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving right along. Series 8000.
So within the Series 8000, we have updates currently for the positions of chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary, with the major changes really being under chairperson based on a discussion that came up at the previous board meeting. Basically, it clarifies the roles of the chairperson and adds, the substantive add is that the chairperson shall serve as an ex officio member without vote on all committees. All right. So what that means is that the chairperson can sit in on the subcommittee meetings without adding to the quorum. Or I didn't say that correctly. Without creating a quorum, because it would technically be 4 members of the board. Apologize for my miscommunication. The vice chairperson just tightens the language, as does the secretary. And I'm aware, there are other policies under review that will come back following some rewrites to an upcoming, I think perhaps even the next board meeting. So, pending questions that I can answer on these, or turning it over to the subcommittee through you, Madam Chair.
I noticed that it also says the chairperson shall serve as the board's spokesperson. I'm not sure if there was discussion, I'm not sure what subcommittee this is, but whoever is on that subcommittee, if there was discussion around the intent of that, I don't remember talking about that piece of it. I know we discussed the ex officio piece.
Yeah, so that really just codifies the way that, at least from my memory, that this has always functioned, is that when we speak as a board, we speak through the board chair.
Yeah, and if I may offer, aligned with your policy, when there's an email that comes to the entirety of the board chair typically is the person who will take responsibility to respond. That has been, I want to check if that might even, for whatever reason, I thought that was existing language that might just be in there already. I'd have to go back and look at our current language, but it just follows your practice. It's not to say that you guys are, in any way, shape, or form voiceless, or your voice is in any way, shape, diminished. It's just the way that, typically that it works. If the newspaper is going to call for a quote, generally we'll try to have that quote come through the board chair, stuff like that.
Got it, thank you.
So, Madam Chairperson, if there are no further discussions, you guys are just receiving this, and what we will do for everyone is we will specifically on those first 3 series, we'll look at those edits, we'll bring them back to the Policy Subcommittee, who will discuss them with your council, and then they will come back at likely the next board meeting, but depending on what that discussion looks like in the timeline, for a formal vote from all of you as a board.
All right, great. So, moving right along here. Yeah. Sorry, y'all. Okay, actually, it's a superintendent's report.
Absolutely, thank you. So again, yes, welcome to February. Very excited to be able to talk not only about Black History Month. We have, the Chinese New Year. We have all of those different pieces. A lot of cultural events going on. We had a great, very successful Welcome to Kindergarten night just last night. There's any number of events going on, and I'd be remiss to say it's going to be a super weekend, both super cold and super football. Shares and celebrations. I want to add emphasis to the West Hartford Youth Leadership Academy. I know our student reps very aptly described it, but I'm so excited by the work that Ms. Gretchen Levitz is doing through their Department of Social Services. We're very, very proud to partner with the Prevention Partnership, WHPP. They are leading and creating a momentum of this work through youth leadership and youth education, and it is it's inspiring. So very, very, very pleased by that. I also want to throw shout outs. I was made aware Connor Jr. Evie Messenger was recently spotlighted for her leadership, her sportsmanship, and her community involvement on the For the Win CIAC podcast. There's a link in that in your board report for you to be able to look at. I want to throw out huge congrats to King Philip students Jillian Forrest, 8th grader, Amy Long, also grade 8, Vera Kausman, grade 8, and AJ Salerno, grade 7, who are among many King Philip students who participated in the United States Kids Lit competition this last week. King Philip sent a total of 5 teams. They swept first, second, and third places. And that first place team that I named, that team of 4, has now qualified through finals to go on to compete in the international competition in New Zealand. And you may recall last year our Sedgwick team, also had an amazing opportunity to travel overseas. So very, very exciting, very, very proud. Also, I want to bring your attention to a great accomplishment. Dawn Hambrecht. She's an ESOL teacher within our adult education program. She has been named one of 3 Connecticut Association and Adult and Continuing Education Educators of the Year for 2026. Dawn, I know Dawn personally. She's been a longtime ESOL teacher. She's worked in our summer program. She's worked for our adult ed program for many years. It is very well deserved, and she very appropriately deflects, equal credit owed to all of her colleagues. But we're very, very proud of Dawn and the work that she's doing. Otherwise, it was mentioned a little bit by, and I think Kayla mentioned the upcoming work with the Breaking Bias program. I wanted to provide you the announcement that aside from what's happening coming up this month, there is a community event, 2 community events, 2 different nights, March the 9th and March the 12th, that will be happening here at the Town Hall Auditorium, where all community members may come. They actually ask high school students, and if you're seeing it at your high schools through the different events there, to not come twice, because they're hoping for a large draw. It will be a registration event. There will be flyers going on. I'll be getting you more information, but very, very excited by that. It's a project that we've been partnering with the University of Connecticut around, and they've been working with our students in our schools all year long, and it's just I just think it's one of the more inspiring things that I've seen in the last few years. Beyond that, I do have some other updates that I've given you, but a lot of it is kind of highlights in some of the same information that I had shared with you last time. We did get the formal letter back, the draft letter from NEASC for Conard High School. I think I had talked to you about what we were anticipating for any number of the commendations. So we now have seen that draft letter in print, and we expect to get a formal report in the next couple of weeks. But as Hall did previously, Conard had an outstanding accreditation meeting. They met standard across all the indicators, and they were spotlighted for a significant number of commendations for PLCs, for a learner-first environment, for a professional inclusive culture, high expectations for kids, a significant decrease in absenteeism, and the professionalism of all the support staff, custodial staff, secretarial support, counseling, everybody, as well as the strength of the curriculum. So I'm just very, very happy to highlight that, and I will yield my time to any questions through you, Madam Chair.
Questions, comments?
What is the Breaking Bias program?
So Breaking Bias is a program associated, it's grant funded through the Sarna Foundation. It's been overseen by the University of Connecticut for a couple of years, and the intent of it, it's a blend between some Holocaust education, but really to kind of break down bias, anti-Semitism, build community by demonstrating the similarities when you can look at people not through a one-dimensional lens of one thing that you might identify them by, but all the different aspects of their identity. That's one part of the program where what they have done, and I think what will be going on display at Hall High School and Conard High School in the upcoming week or so, is they did interviews and took photos of a number of individuals. Some of them might be like your high school principal, some of them might be a teacher, some of them might be just, I know that one of the custodians at Conard was, so you're trying to get a real cross-section of a community. They interview them about, who they are, what their interests are, what their hobbies are, and they photograph them, and then they have a QR code with a recording. And so that is a first part that's going to be on display to kind of really demonstrate to people, wow, here's someone who, maybe I only know their name, maybe I don't know them at all, or I associate them with how I know them, but I recognize them now as a person with so much more depth, and I see some of the parallels, some of the intersections with my interests, and now maybe, I've broken down some of that bias that I have to know them well. Then some of the other pieces that they have, I know the students mentioned empathy interviews that are going to be happening, but some of the real cool whiz-bang stuff is relative to our Holocaust survivors. Over the last several years, they've interviewed and videotaped Holocaust survivors, talking to them about everything, not just about their experience through the Holocaust as a one-dimensional thing, but trying to get to the multiple dimensions, who they are, what their interests are. And through the use of AI, you can now sit and have a conversation with them and feel like you're talking to them in real time. And it's been programmed to provide, you can ask nearly anything and you'll get an answer. So if you want to know what their favorite food is, or what book they like to read, or something like that, they're going to be able to provide that. And then there are some other elements in terms of education around that. So I don't want to steal too much of the thunder, but it's an extremely exciting opportunity and learning opportunity for, I think, for all of us, and with the intent of building community. That at the end of the day, that is their intent as they get around it. And I just have to throw kudos not only to our very hardworking high school staff, our principals, our assistant principals, our curriculum teams that have been involved, as well as our students that are working on it all year long, but the team at UConn, Alan Marcus, he has a group of interns and students. They're absolutely phenomenal. So I'm very excited for this.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all those awesome updates. Anything else, y'all? All right, so next we have staff reports and board discussion. So we're going to start with restorative practices, changing practice in schools. So welcome up Ms. Teresa Rengel, Mr. Scott Dunn, Ms. Sarah Isaacs, and Ms. Christy Laverty to start. Did I pronounce that right, Christy? Laverty. Oh, Laverty. Sorry. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, also, y'all, full transparency. I am very different than Shannon. I need y'all to be as concise as possible so that I can follow. I'm that student. So it can be hard for me if it starts to drag out too much, and you might lose me, and I don't want that to happen, but I know that I have that problem. And so I'm just saying, please be as concise as you can be to help me follow you. And I might interrupt and ask questions. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be here in front of you again. I know it's just been a couple of weeks. We haven't even had long enough to miss each other. But I am actually more excited because I get to bring together a phenomenal team. And I truly believe, particularly because we did have a nice long conversation last time, to be a show, not tell person. I think I've told a lot about the work that we're doing. I'm excited for you to be able to have an opportunity to kind of to talk to the team and see like the work in action and what's been happening in our buildings. And so, our goal is really building meaningful relationships through respect agreements. Not just respect agreements. Respect agreements is one part of restorative practices, but was foundational. And so I won't read to you. But we are really working to make sure that we embed the practices and that they live through all of the elements of what we do. So I want to hitting to your concise and getting to it. I would love to talk to you about it, but I think it's actually really more important that you hear it from children. So to start us off, we have a video that just kind of has students talking about it. I'm in here under duress because the person taping refused to let me off the hook. Actually, so is Sarah. But I just want you to have an opportunity to kind of learn from students about respect agreements and what it's meant for us.
For many years, West Hartford Public Schools has been intentional about creating welcoming schools, spaces where students, families, and staff feel greeted, acknowledged, and valued. We know that being welcomed is not the same as belonging, and belonging is not the same as inclusion. Inclusion means being invited to actively shape the community, not just being present in it. One of the ways that we bring inclusion to life is through respect agreements. A respect agreement is a restorative practice that helps build strong relationships from the start of the year. It's not the teacher's wish list, and it's not a list of rules created for students.
A respect agreement is created with students. It is a collaborative process where every voice helps define what respect looks like, sounds like, and feels like in a classroom community. In elementary classrooms, students often describe respect as kindness, listening, keeping hands to ourselves, and taking care of shared materials. These ideas are written in student language and posted as a visible reminder and reference throughout the school year, becoming an anchor for everyone. Respect agreements are organized around 4 key relationships: how students want to be treated by each other, how students want to be treated by their teacher, how teachers want to be treated by students, and how everyone treats the shared space.
A respect agreement is when you respect other people. So like when you're in a disagreement, you're not gonna like yell at them, and they're your friends, so you're not gonna lash out at them. You respect them and you don't want to like make them feel bad or do a put down.
I think respect agreements help everybody in the classroom.
It kind of just gives us guidelines how we can really react. And if somebody's not treating you as you want, you can always point out, well, in our respect agreement, we agreed to not doing this or doing this.
Respect agreements are like stronger if we work together, not just in your classroom community, but in your school community, because the more people, the more stronger. Respect agreements help us to get along and do our best.
Boundaries help you respect other people.
It's not only to be used inside your classroom, it's kind of a guideline to be used in general, in life, out of the school, but especially in the school with all students, all teachers, and all school property. Just like how you treat your classroom with care, treat all school property with care as well.
Treat someone how you want to be treated.
At the secondary level, students name respect as being listened to, not being talked down to, not being embarrassed, and being given space to make and repair mistakes. Respect agreements create space for honest conversations. They help bridge differences in culture, age, and experience, and they prevent one group from defining respect for everyone else. Because respect agreements are living documents, they are revisited throughout the year. When something is not going as expected, we don't ask which rule was broken. Instead, we ask which part of our agreement needs attention, or how can we repair this together? The agreement becomes a communication tool, not a consequence chart. It supports accountability, reflection, and repair.
If you're taught how to think and not what to think explicitly, you come to these agreements on your own, and you're able to further explore them in your own way and apply them to places further in life. And it's able for a student to be able to further respect a teacher, since they're not being told, you have to respect me because this. You earn respect, and you earn respect as you grow.
I think respect in a classroom means a positive environment for learning. I think when you feel respected and you respect your teachers, you can maximize your learning capabilities, and you don't have to worry about other issues. You can just focus on being the best student you can possibly be.
Open communication and being comfortable with everyone around you and feeling free to voice your opinions on all different topics.
I think students can reach their full potential with the respect agreement because we can all be a part of one community where we're really learning something.
It means boundaries, like being able to respect that other people don't have the same opinions as you or aren't from the same places as you, don't have the same background. So to be able to understand that and have compassion and empathy towards that is very important.
I think that when students help define respect, it creates a more welcoming environment and everyone just feels more included and more accepted, because when students feel heard by their teacher, they feel like they want to treat each other with respect, and they feel like it's not as much of a rule as it is just something that they want to do for themselves.
Across West Hartford Public Schools, respect agreements help us deepen a sense of belonging and create inclusive learning spaces. Spaces where every student and every adult feels safe, valued, heard, and responsible for the community that they are a part of. Respect is something we offer one another to honor each other's humanity. It's not a rule to follow. It is a commitment that we build together as we prepare and inspire all students.
Having respect for everyone, no matter what situation I'm in, has been a really helpful trait that I have gained from the West Hartford Public School system.
For many years, West Hartford Public Schools has been intentional about
So again, really thought it was important for you to hear directly from kids and how they were perceiving it, and trying to kind of span the grade levels so that we don't just focus on, I know that our elementary kids are amazing, and of course my own background is in elementary, but I also thought it was really important that we talk across the span of the work that we're doing. I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Mr. Dunn here.
So we hope that that brief video really showcased to you the power and the influence of the respect agreements in this inaugural year of implementation here in all of our schools. And what we're really seeing here is the investment continuum of how do we define respect by including our kiddos, by getting their input, and then really writing those respect agreements in student-friendly language and really grounding it in building relationships. Really, perhaps most of us grew up in classrooms where perhaps there were more posted rules. This is very different from that, because this is really inviting everyone to be a part of that creation of what that class would look like and sound like from a respect perspective, and where everyone is the author. So this is a collaborative process that really requires the input of the group that it's really intended for. And to speak a little bit about what Teresa said, this is very much foundational work that builds very authentically and sincerely on the welcoming schools piece that we have been focusing on, and also a sense of belonging towards that inclusion. So you'll notice in the video and also in some of the pictures that are coming up next that we have 4 quadrants: student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, and everyone to the classroom. So really everything we do in life, whether it's in school or in the workplace, everything that we enjoy and experience really emanates around a shared experience of relationships with each other. So we need to really learn about what respect means for the very people who will be impacted by it. So in this particular situation of using respect agreements, everyone has a voice in creating those, and it really not only creates a sense of ownership, but also accountability. So you'll see here, these are just some possible things that could be brainstormed by kids, facilitated by the teacher in terms of how students want to be treated by each other. And then we also have how teachers want to be treated by students, some possible examples there. And then also the teacher, the student, how do students want to be treated by their teachers? And then we have everyone in the classroom, how do we all treat the physical space for the classroom? I particularly really enjoy the aspect here of welcoming guests. We have so many people in our schools that we welcome into our school community, and to be able to have that be a part of that is very meaningful for not only our students, but also our teachers. So here we just have simply some Wolcott examples, but you could go into any of our 16 schools and you would see something very similar. And while the content may differ simply because of the shared experience from the students and the teacher, you're going to see with fidelity the 4 quadrants that we just described. So when we look at some of these examples here, again, these are Wolcott, you can really see the investment of students. And you really look at the language, you'll see that that was something that students helped to create. So this is a communication tool that can be used in a variety of ways. Just recently at Wolcott, I'm sure other schools, that January post-December vacation, the New Year and New Year's resolution really creates a really genuine opportunity for teachers and students to say, hey, let's review what we created in September together, because as students have grown, so too has the respect agreement grow. So we may need to create some revisions. It's a great way to check in on the expectations that were agreed upon earlier in the year. And another great part of the respect agreement and its power is that it's visible in the classroom. And it's something that can be a springboard for conversation that can be formal or it can be informal. It can be a teacher and a student, or a student and a student, or it could include the entire class. So, this is our first year. Yes.
So sorry, I have one question before you go on. So I see here when the students are not following the agreement, is there a protocol for when a teacher's not following the agreement?
Absolutely, and that would be, we have a lot of students who thankfully have that powerful student voice. We've seen that at Wolcott, and I'm certain we've seen that in all of our schools, would say, hey, Mr. Dunn, can we look back and talk about this? And that's what we want. We want the students to be able to really engage in their own, the power of their voice, to be able to say, let's look at something that we created together, not that the teacher had just created.
I would just also add that I think it's also really important as teachers to model, hey, listen, we had came up with and we agreed on X, Y, and Z, and I just realized that what I just did, like if I raised my voice or like whatever, right? I'm gonna go back and take a look at that, and I think it's a really good practice so that kids can actually see that we're modeling it, and it is. That's why it's a shared agreement, so that we're holding each other accountable and ourselves accountable to it. So good catch.
So what are our hopes in this inaugural year of the creation, implementation, use of the respect agreements is that we want a very visible and also a live document about how everyone wants to be treated. And then as a reference point and a reflection tool throughout the year, but also for the possibility to minimize conflict when it does occur. So when conflicts do occur, and they will, we use these collaborative respect agreements within the classroom to support those restorative conversations that we've been spending the last few years engaged in. And now this just gives a list of the other 6 areas of our equity-focused work this year. And all of these here, including respect agreements, are assured experiences and a declaration of what we really feel is important, and hopefully it's not only intentional, but impactful in all the work we've been doing in the West Hartford Public Schools over the last few years.
So that's, just kind of tying up, like thinking about respect agreements, but I'm gonna move on because I also think that this work that we do, I'm going to close this because we don't have any more slides.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I just have a quick question. Who authored the quote earlier?
That was, it's funny. It was found in one of the texts.
One of the texts of our professional development.
But it's funny because afterwards he was like, I can't remember which one we found it. And I'm like,
It's one of the texts
yeah.
that we had when we were
Yeah.
creating, I think, the module.
Yeah, I think I'm going to guess it's Corwin's book that we've been using, but I'll find it for you.
Thank you.
No problem. Good. All right, I'm going to close this.
I have one question too.
Sure. Well, we're not done, but just wanna...
I am curious about how, oh gosh, now I'm going to forget what was just up there.
Oh.
How these buckets of classroom.
Learning the modules themselves?
No, just like not the rules. I'm trying to call them rules, quadrants.
The respect agreement?
The respect agreements,
Gotcha.
thank you. Respect agreements apply to the restorative practices. Like how do those two things merge together?
Okay. Anybody else want to take a, no?
Are they supposed to merge together?
They are. Like, so if you think about restorative practices as a community builder, right, it helps define how we go about building community. And so the respect agreements are really foundational, because if we don't know the rules of engagement, if you will, there's lots of room for conflict. There's lots of room for misunderstanding, which is why you have that shared conversation about, you know, how is it that we actually want to treat each other, and what are we expecting from each other. So, you know, really restorative practices in its purest form spends most of its time exploring how we intentionally learn the best ways to treat each other and care for each other, right, as a community. So if you think about it in that term, right, then respect agreements, it starts there. Like I need to understand and know what respect looks like for you and what respect looks like for me, particularly when you have different roles, and particularly when there seems to be this sense of a hierarchy. Like, so if you think about, we work with children and you're an adult, right? Typically speaking, we have this natural tendency for a hierarchy that says that the adult makes the rules and the kids have to follow, right? That's how we all grew up. This breaks that down, and it really hammers home that understanding, that respect, and I believe it always has been, but you know, formalizing that the respect has to be mutual, and it has to be shared, it has to be defined together, not just defined by the person who has the perceived power in the space.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah. And I'll just piggyback on that restorative practices is 80% proactive and 20% responsive. Yeah. And the first part of the proactive piece is co-created agreements. So it's helpful. Jonathan, and then Miriam?
My question goes to the 20% of the time that's responsive, and I guess, you know, a lot of the discussion we had at our last meeting about, you know, discipline practices, and I guess my question is, when do these restorative practices and respect agreements then transition into the discipline policy? Because, you know, I can tell you, I hear anecdotally through the community that there's a lot of students, say for example, who are receiving, say, lunch detentions for various, you know, classroom infractions or school rule infractions, and of course, you know, that sounds like something we all grew up with, which is obviously not necessarily the respect agreement. So I was wondering, how do these fit?
Jonathan, thanks for the question, and wanted to ask before we keep asking questions, were y'all about to start talking about that?
Yeah, so
I know I saw a formal RJ conference on the agenda, so I thought, I know that's the response to that, so I didn't know if
I'm going to hold to that, because I think that's really important, but I do think that we're going to get to that within, that's why instead of having to hear from me, which I know that you love hearing from me, I think it's more important to hear from the practitioners as to how this is working, how it works out in school. So I think to kind of build the better understanding of kind of getting to that point that you're getting to along the way. And if not, I'll pick up that question if that works.
Thank you. Because I mean, all this sounds great, as long as everybody's adhering to their respective agreement, that everything's going well.
Listen, if I could ensure that everyone adhered to the respect agreements, I would be rich and famous. But meanwhile, you know, I think it's more important that you have the relationship, so when things don't go right, when things go left and it doesn't work out, we have a relationship and we have a trust established so that we can sit down together and we can have conversations, and then we can do that hard work of repairing, right? But again, without those relationships, that conversation and those repairs just take so much longer, and you know, you may not ever actually get to the point of actually resolving and making people feel, you know, the way they want to feel, right? So I'm going to pass it along. I'm going to ask.
Real quick, we'll get Miriam's question, and then we'll go on, y'all. Sorry, she was waiting. No, I'm sorry. I know. After Miriam, I was going to keep us moving. Sorry.
It's quick. It's really just to piggyback, and I don't want to misspeak for you, LaToya, but at the last meeting, you also asked about kind of parent buy-in, and I think maybe kind of speaking to what Jen and John are asking, and certainly what I've been curious about, and asked at the last meeting, and I asked, who authored the quote, and I think the question is, can we get some information about the restorative practice? I don't want to speak for anyone, but perhaps it would be helpful for us to better understand what's going on in the schools if we could have the evidence-based practice, if that could be listed in presentations, if that could be accessible, again, not just for us, but for the community, for parent buy-in. So we know what you're referencing, what's then being employed would be super helpful. Thank you.
Got it.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to highlight how we are using data to guide decisions and strengthen our restorative school culture at Duffy. Over the past 5 months, we've conducted structured listening sessions with all stakeholders to better understand lived experiences in our school. In November, a joint session with student representatives, 10 of them, and parents, about 20, surfaced 4th grade recess sports concerns, where students openly shared their feelings of exclusionary, punitive, and just a stressful overall environment each day upon taking the field at Duffy. Rather than imposing adult-created solutions or eliminating sports altogether, which would have been easy, we facilitated a series of student-led problem-solving conferences. Students developed shared expectations, norms, acknowledged the harm that had been caused, and agreed upon a path forward. As a result, there have been no 4th grade recess violations or office referrals for the past 3 months, with students demonstrating real accountability and ownership of the plan. Our annual school climate survey also provided important qualitative and quantitative data to guide improvement. At Duffy, May's survey results highlighted inequitable access to classroom volunteer opportunities for our families across grades. In response, we held several follow-up listening sessions, partnered with our PTO and our room leads, and we implemented a more inclusive process, a system, this school year. Finally, as you heard, a central focus of this work has been building staff capacity through the implementation of our 6 professional learning modules. At Duffy, we have completed the first 3 modules and are preparing to begin the 4th, which focuses on building trust with students. In preparation for this learning, we are administering a student survey this week to better understand how students are currently experiencing trust at Duffy. This data will serve as a meaningful reflection point for staff as we engage in the learning and the conversation together. So overall, the intentional use of data has led to more proactive community building, more conversation, and more restorative responses to conflict. While the work is ongoing, early indicators show improvements in stakeholder engagement, fairer systems developed and implemented, and an overall more positive and restorative school climate. Thank you.
So I'm here to share from the secondary level, looking at our building level data analysis that allows us to shape how students and adults experience the school day. And I have 2 examples of how we've been using data to make changes at Hall. So at first, we really wanted to focus this year on building relationships and creating a culture of not just welcoming, but belonging in line with the district vision. So as a faculty, we delved into our adult to student connection and then looked into our student to adult connection. Do students feel they have a trusted adult in the building that they can go to and depend on? So in October, we looked at all our students across grades 10 through 12. We looked at every roster, and staff looked to identify their perceived connections with students. Who were they connected to? And we defined that as a group in our meeting that, would a student say they're connected to you? Was really, and we said, do your best. We know this isn't perfect, but we're going to do our best. And so we went through and we identified levels of connection for all our students and found a group that we identified as in need of a connection focus. And then that was shared back with our faculty so that we could really make sure that we were being intentional in how we set up our classrooms and how we, how did you approach students to strengthen this connection. Then we also wanted to test if, our data was it working? So then we had we formally had a grant through SBDI, School-Based Diversion Initiative, and we have 2 trained leaders in residence. And although the grant has ended, their training still remains. And so we were able to leverage them to start. They surveyed all the students that we were concerned about as far as a connection focus. And we asked these students, do you feel connected? Do you feel connected to adults? And it was very interesting that we were more aligned. We felt that the data was very aligned, that students identified that maybe they were more connected to friends. And we are talking about high school students, so having more connection with friends is also grade level appropriate, but making sure that you still have that connection with an adult, whether it's through a counselor, or a teacher, or a coach in any way. So we found that their perception of how connected they were was aligned. And now our leaders and residents are currently organizing circles with those students, but also with a mix of students across grades and connection levels so that we can just hear from all students, but of course, also focusing on what is their feedback. So we're in the process of those circles right now. We also just revisited those rosters to see the new connections or increased connections since October. And we found that connection identified by the teacher was up 30 to 40% across all grade levels. And that we really saw, and then we started looking at our freshmen because October was a hard month to ask, do you know all the freshmen? But now we know them and we are more connected. So we are going to keep reevaluating this. We felt that the start of this semester 2 was a great time to look at it as we welcome semesterized classes. They welcome new rosters, but also as you reset, for that second semester. So we're really happy about that increased connection, and we look forward to hearing what those students are going to say across all of those circles. We think it's a great opportunity to learn more from our students so that we can make more changes. A second way that we've been using climate data is from our spring data, and really over the past few years we asked the question, is there a space in the school where you don't feel safe? And over that has been identified as bathrooms. And we've seen that trend. We see it in the actual data. We see it from parent comments. We see it from student comments. And this year we really took we decided we were going to just do something about it. I called it swinging. I said, Teresa, I'm going to swing for the fences. And so we changed the duty. We created a new duty for teachers. And that is we call it the hall sweeps. So they're in the hall, but they're also at hall. And so what it is a path that goes by every single bathroom every period. And we have 2 to 3 teachers completing this pathway by every single bathroom each period. So between administrators, security, and teachers, we just have increased adult presence throughout the school and at a higher frequency. And, we went from mid-year last year to only 62% of students saying they felt comfortable in the bathroom. We're doing our mid-year survey this month within our community to find out more. But I can tell you from my Titan talks where students come and talk to me, and from parent feedback, I'm at PTO meetings, I see parents all the time, that the increased adult presence and visibility has really created a sense of safety. And the feedback I'm getting from students is that they appreciate the presence of these adults. They know that they're there to keep them safe. They know that they're there for a reason. And we've also seen a decrease in incidences in the bathroom. Knock on.
Can you just elaborate when you say that they don't feel safe in the bathroom? What does that mean? Can you unpack that
So
a
at the
little
high
bit?
school level, the comments that I've gotten from is we've had incidents of graffiti, we've had incidences of vaping. Just it's a space in a high school where there typically isn't an adult presence, and so that's what we typically see as far as the feedback on climate surveys.
In terms of that feedback, is there any difference in terms of the genders of the students reporting? Do females feel less safe than males, or vice versa?
We don't have that as part of an indicator in the survey.
I think one thing I would say is, I think even as adults, if you walk into a bathroom and there's a group of people in there and they're like gathered together and talking and what have you, it's more intimidating to walk into a bathroom where it's not like just you go in and people are just all individually there to do what they're doing. But when you're hanging out, right, if you're clustering, that's just intimidating in general. And that's what I've gotten when I've talked to students, like whether male or female. It's just like if you're not part of that group, you're not going to be comfortable in that space. I was like, right?
Yeah.
Just have a couple of questions. I wrote them down. When a student's a teacher. Oh, so I have one question around just like harms that happen when it's not the student's teacher and it's just a teacher in passing and there's harm between the student and teacher. Like what is is it still that same process? I know y'all talked about the respect agreements, and I know those are in the classroom spaces, and so just kind of wanted to understand what happens when it's not the student's teacher.
I think when it's any adult in the building, we still work to create opportunities to have students feel heard with whether it's their counselor, their administrator, kind of figure out what has happened, what we speak to the other adult, and then we always try to provide a situation where they can come together and work through it. It doesn't matter necessarily what role you have, that the restore has to come back. And I think when I think about respect agreements, you need something to restore to. And having those allow us a space to restore back. So I don't think the adult role matters.
Okay, great. And I had a couple other questions. One was around, and I'll stay here on high school, and then I'll ask elementary school. I'll stay at secondary, and I'll go to elementary. Just around, I know y'all gave some qualitative data here, but like data around implementation, like something that I'd like to see is what traditional punitive responses is restorative justice replacing? And so even just like this replace what we would normally do, like just numbers on that would be helpful, and then understanding how that plays into some of the disparity that we've seen historically. So that's just a data point I've been thinking a lot about. And again, thinking too about, I know there's LIRs, the leaders in residence, and I know West Hartford has a few. And so I'm just also wondering about the implementation team, like our folks meeting and gathering that data and thinking about sustainability, because that leads me to my next question, which it sounds like things are great at Duffy. And now I'm like, okay, sustainability for all the elementary schools, what does that look like? Are you the implementation team leader now? Or
What I would say is part of what makes this work, to truly be equity, to think about equity, which means, there are some things where I'm looking for like the equal, right? Like the equal learning, the equal opportunity to learn the same things and have the same conversations. And then when you start thinking about like equity, where you're getting what you need, I think that becomes really important, and part of why, what I insist on, that's why the modules are created and everyone is deliver the modules, and we come together, like even at EDC, and we talk about it with the EDC leads and the building principals. What I insist on is that we're all, like every certified staff member, and I'm working my way through getting out of the certified and kind of being more staff in general, but whatever, I'll use the systems I have in place for the time, is that we're all having the same opportunity to learn about the same things. What your team, because now that you've learned this, what you do with it and how you, and what that data means for your school, it, really becomes like the work of the leadership team within the building, in collaboration with their partner person from my office, to kind of have those conversations and make sure that we're okay. So now you have this data. What's that going to look like? Do you need any additional supports? And being able to provide those supports if they need them. I think it's really important that does stay at a building level, because our schools are all different. Like, they have their own heartbeats, and I think that's really important. And I think that we have to honor that. I was laughing because as a former principal, when going through what Surface for Duffy is, that you have an abundance of parents who are trying to come in the middle of the workday to come and volunteer, and I'm like, impressive, because that was not an issue that I would have been able to have in the school that I was a principal of, right? So you couldn't bring that problem of practice to my building and it resonate, right? It needed to be something that was centered around my building. And so I do think that that's important, that we allow them to be able to do that. But the learning is consistent, and we meet monthly to discuss implementation to ensure that everything is being implemented along the way. And I know that you're looking ahead.
No, I was thinking about, the folks who are sitting at your table right now.
Yeah.
And obviously wonderful high school principals and wonderful elementary school principals. But there's one group that's not represented at your table, and I was wondering how these principals are implemented in our middle schools. Because I think there's obviously the middle schools, a lot happens in grades 6 to 8.
It's funny that you mentioned middle schools, and I'll be really transparent with you of the reason why I didn't tackle a middle school person. And as all the leaders here will tell you, I've been very clear with them that, everybody will be tapped for something. So middle schools are actually, to be honest with you, a very high focus for me. It's the battleground, particularly when you have students who are struggling. And so we actually, we focused a lot of funds, additional resources, and supports at middle school. So right now we're running a middle school program, a wraparound program, with opportunities to again, attempt to kind of create some additional supports that live there. And so you will see middle school principals. The next time I probably come, you'll be seeing nothing but middle school principals and me, and then I will release my elementary and high school friends. But I also recognize that in effort of saving time, I can't bring everybody. Paul said no.
Completely understood.
Yeah, and I just wanted to respond to one thing that you had asked, LaToya, kind of about metrics and replacement. And obviously, I have a clear message from the board. We're looking, these guys are talking, and they're even starting to share some impact metrics anecdotally or school-based, and we'll continue to provide you that at the, at more of a mile-high district view. But I think my hope is that the ongoing work that we're doing leads to prevention. So you're going to see numbers drop as opposed to replacement, because for us we're always going to have some consequences for different behaviors. But I think number one, I think this work helps to build understanding, greater context. So not only will it diminish, but it will also provide some of that situational context to when you are dealing with something that administrators, they have the ability to have these conversations. There are guidelines. It's not always an equation. X, you do X and you get Y. They have some leeway to be able to provide that, and I think that will also evolve as the work continues to mature.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I guess what I'm thinking of more specifically is definitely the reduction, because you're right, that's what we'll see overall is a reduction in suspension, expulsion. I think one of the things I'm thinking about is in the past, typically we've given extended detentions for this, or typically in the past we've given suspensions in this, and we're noticing we're decreasing those numbers because we're, so I think those are more so, and I know those are more qualitative, so even I think just hearing some of those experiences from students, and again, they don't have to come because I know there's, privacy, but even some of those more general, went through the conference process and this is how they felt after, or this is, they did something creative, some of those cool stories, harm was repaired in this way, they did some cool community service, or they broke bread with someone, or they, created a dope social media campaign. Just some of those little nuances Yeah. Miriam?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I have a question actually related to Mrs. Laverty and your mention of the data collection. And I'm just wondering, and I think I had asked at the last meeting as well, but now more curious even about how, if this is unique to Duffy, the methods of collection, or if all schools are collecting quantitative and qualitative data, and what is the tracking going to look like to measure impact and then look at student achievement, and if that's impacted then by all of this work that's being done in the classrooms. Thank you.
Well, I know that in all of our schools last year, as our focus, through EDC, and Teresa's, we studied street data, and we were, tasked with implementing that, right? So that's really where the listening sessions began. And so in all of our schools, right, we were bringing stakeholder groups together and conducting those. I think, I can only speak specifically to Duffy with the success of them, and then using that as, problem arose, right? And then, okay, we need to figure out what's happening here, hear from more people, partner together in the problem solving and the repair process. So we definitely have sort of carried on with it as a strategy, right? All of us administer the annual school climate in May, and we do that with students, we do it with our families, and we do it with our staff. So that's true in all of our schools. And then within the professional learning modules and the data that we're collecting there to sort of ground us in the work, guide the work, create the reflection point, that student survey that I described where we are gaining information about their current feelings of trust at school is happening in all of our schools. So that's a part of the pre-work in the module that we dug into and are all preparing to deliver with our staff.
But again, for privacy purposes and for who needs the information and to do what with, it lives in the school where it belongs, where the actions to help guide those schools will happen, right? So they collect it, their team works on it, they tap someone in from our team if they need us. To be honest, sometimes, again, to be honest, Christy didn't need me she saw the data, pulled together her team, they came up with a plan for it, and they ran with it. We talked about it, and I'm like, yeah, sounds great. But that's, that really is, how it's designed to work, right? You want people to feel empowered. You have, we are blessed in West Hartford. I have worked in 6 districts. We are blessed to have an extremely strong and talented group of leaders who know their charge, and and are reminded of their charge monthly when we meet, and sometimes more often. This month we'll meet twice because we have EDC this week. But our focus on what we're working on and why we're working on it is constant. And again, we're not perfect. Things happen. We are determined to
And I have one
to get
piggyback.
better.
Just Christy mentioned, and I apologize. I thought I was trying to answer. I was trying to predict your question and answer it when I was talking to LaToya. So when I was talking about impact metrics with her, that's what I'm referencing. And at a district level, as Christy mentioned, there is a common survey tool that we utilize with all students, staff, and parents, and there are metrics that I share with the board at the end of the year as part of my evaluation process as to where we are. So you guys will get to see some of that. And those of you that have been on the board have seen some of that in the past.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say that Christy's mentioning the Building Trust Student Survey. So we had administered that survey at Wolcott over the last 2 weeks. Tomorrow during the CSI, we're engaging in that professional development, but the data that we received from our kiddos, K-5, really oriented how we were facilitating not only that session tomorrow, but actually sparks a revisit to a previous restorative practice focus on impromptu conversations. So it's nice how all of these modules really remain interconnected. So one of our scores was a little bit lower than perhaps we thought. So we thought, let's revisit a portion of that November PD as a point to strengthen us moving forward.
Thank you all. I really appreciate this. I love hearing the Duffy Playground example. I think that, it's just so important for how children then live the rest of their lives. If they can figure out a soccer game on their own, it just bodes well for all of us. I also wanted just to commend the hall sweeps. I think it's fantastic that you took it upon yourself to solve the problem that the kids identified and then also followed up to make sure it was actually helping. So lots of kudos to you guys, and I appreciate you sharing it tonight. 2 questions. One is on the circles. I'm interested to hear kind of like what that is. And the second is, I think I've been hearing, I don't think it's unique to West Hartford, but, there's name calling that happens, whether it's because of your religion or the color of your skin or some other assumption that happens all through grades. And I'm curious to learn how this practice that you're talking about here, like what does that mean in elementary school if there's something, if a child calls someone else something that they shouldn't be, and in high school, like, can you share with me what happens? And then secondly, when we're talking about data, I'm curious about, I've had a number of parents ask me about tracking. Like, do we track if a child is name calling, let's say, based on skin color or based on religion, or is that noted as kind of a, disrespectful behavior and the specifics of it aren't maybe not relevant is the wrong word, but recorded? So just answer that simple question.
I can answer the second part for you because it's part of the state reporting. So generally, there's this one category that we talked about at that previous board meeting. It falls under the global threatening behavior, but there's a specific code. If someone is using any language that would be like race, ethnicity, sexual identity, any of these protected class type things, and there's a specific code for that right now. The state is actually looking to break that up into smaller bite size, because right now that there's a lot of stuff. It's hate speech and hate crime and all this other, it's one big lumped category. We've teased that out. I think I shared at the last meeting the number relative to, I think there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 incidents overall for threatening behavior. About a third of them were related to slurs across the entirety of the district. But it doesn't break it down to say this slur was based on gender, this slur was based on religion, this slur was based on identity. The schools kind of have an understanding of that. They know that, but that's not how it's necessarily tracked and reported at the state level, but the state's looking to refine some of that. And I think they can answer the bigger question, what do you do? I would love, because I know they do amazing things with children, developmentally appropriate, so I'd love for them to answer.
Just real quick, I appreciate it would be very challenging, and I don't even know if it would be helpful to divide that out, but I bring it up because I think it's hard to tackle a problem if you don't know what the problem is. So like, let's say we have a problem with students, calling out skin color, let's say. And if we don't know that that's a problem across the town, then how can we address it? I guess is where I'm really getting to.
Well, understanding that question,
Yeah.
I can better answer
Great.
you then. As part of those district surveys that we talked about, there are very specific questions for families, for students, and for teachers and staff relative to what they've observed, if they've observed or if they've been the victim of being treated differently, unfairly, or had something by virtue of, and then the students can specify those conditions. So we do have that information that each of the schools are responsive to in terms of when they're looking at it and they're defining what is the problem of practice, what is kind of popping as a red flag at my school. So now that I understand what you're really asking, I can.
Thank you. Great.
I would also add that if there's been a disciplinary anything related to it, we know the numbers, and we can go back and look at the incident and see exactly what it was and what's tracking. And I'll be really honest with you, what's tracking that's always been tracking this country as the major issue would be, I guess, what would fall in the category of anti-Blackness, right? Racial slurs, particularly around that.
Do you want to start?
High school and elementary.
Do you want to start? I feel like you should start elementary. It gets a little different when they're a little bigger.
So this has happened this school year, and the process is comprehensive and very, very thorough. So it begins with sort of an immediate coming together to understand what happened, how it happened, the processing of it, a safety plan for the victim, and that typically does involve some degree of consequence, right? There's separation and a need for space. There might be the loss of a privilege. There certainly is parent partnership. And then, from there, in our case, right, there's a lot of learning that needs to happen. And so we developed with our school counselor a series of lessons, so counseling sessions, lessons in which the student participated. And then the student needed to demonstrate learning to both the mom and us as a school. Certainly then a plan for the repair, an apology. And so this takes place, it really, for several weeks, it takes time, but it's comprehensive and includes all the components that's needed to fully work through something as serious as that.
Yeah. And so is the, would a restorative practice, are these respect agreements, is that supposed to be part of this?
Yeah, so,
okay.
Ending, that formal conferencing piece did occur in my example, right, where the students they did come together in a facilitated, structured conversation in which an apology was delivered, and the families came together.
That's really impressive. Thank you for sharing that.
Just to add on to Christy, she and I actually share the same elementary school counselor, so when she describes that, it's extremely similar with what we've experienced at Wolcott. I'd want to also add the follow-up piece, not just the immediate, but when harm has occurred and strategic steps have been taken, both consequence, restorative practice, follow-up supports. We also really want to think about longer than that and long-term and really checking in on those students. I think in the busyness of the day, we focus very honestly and sincerely in the moment with those supports and response, but also we want to make sure that we're following up longer term on those young friends.
Sarah,
we, speaking of my middle school friends, which I've been spending a lot of time with lately, we've had lots of conversations about what's happening in the world and how they're feeling, and they're definitely feeling the frustrations of what they described, not my words, their words, the adults having no clue how to behave with themselves. But they, one of the things that they also surfaced is we've been talking a lot about hate, right? Hate speech and in all the ways that it comes out. We've also done a lot of proactive things, right? 4th and 5th grade in all schools have had a conversation directly about hate speech. And so materials were created and delivered so that, building administration along with whatever their team, right, can go in and actually have those conversations. And if you're an elementary school parent with a student in 4th or 5th grade, you got a letter home that said, hey, listen, just wanted to let you know we had this conversation. And more importantly, on top of our conversation, we invite you to have that conversation at home as well. Because I do think that it's very important that we will do our part, but it is a partnership, right? And so, we understand the times that we are in and just the pressure cooker that has been developed with everything that's been going on. And, there really is a need, I think, for us to be collectively working on this messaging. But, I have to say, we have protocols in place for how we handle things when they happen within school. We have guidelines, and of course, we have, more importantly for us as a team, is we have partnership in working through those things. And again, nothing is perfect. There's no place, I have not found a place where things never happen. But for me, it's how we respond to the things when they do happen, and if are we getting better? Are we getting smarter? Are we opening more doors so more people feel comfortable coming in and telling us? I think there's a huge difference between what people will put on the survey and what we get from the survey, and what happens when you actually pull people in a room together and you talk about it. Particularly when it comes to students, like they are not bashful about sharing at all.
So on the secondary the high school level, it's actually, I think there's a lot of similarities in how we get a report, we go through an investigation, we work really closely as a team. So I have 3 assistant principals. It's the same structure at Conard, and I know that both teams work really closely, again, to make sure we know everybody's on the same page of what are the trends, what are we looking at, what is happening in this instance, and making sure that we're fully looking through the lens of like the whole child who is the victim, but also what are we going to do for the student that's created this, made this impact. And so we actually look through a lot of what is an intention versus what is your impact, because we'll get students that say I was joking or something like that, and we talk a lot about your impact to our school community, and then how are we going to repair back from that impact. We have made some changes specifically this year, and I know I've worked across town with Jocelyn on what does it look like when a student does have a consequence, because it's an and right now. Like we would have a consequence, but there is an and to it of how we're going to repair back. And we've included creating a space where if a student is has a consequence, that they also have access to a school counselor throughout their day, that they're completing a reflection on the impact of their actions, and that they're also then accessing new learning through their counselor. So their time during the consequence is also used for that piece. They also would have access to our leaders in residence. So if there's a repair where they're going to have a conference and the victim wants to have that repair, that they have access to that. But we also employ safety plans, excuse me, or communication plans. Sometimes it's just about how are we going to agree to interact with one another in the future. And, we really work to support the victim in the long term, as well as the student that, committed the transgression. That what does this plan for follow-up look like, and what does follow-up look like to you, and having a student define that. And then as we go through that, they also have access to our clinicians and their team in the future to make sure that really this happened, but we've restored, and then how are we going to move forward so it doesn't happen again, where we, instead of replacing, it's just not going to happen. It's that work before the next concern comes up.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. Oh, go ahead. You go first.
Sorry. Oh, I lost my voice again. Sorry, I had a question for you. Just what does access to a school counselor look like for either like a perpetrator or a victim? Just because I know every student has access to a student counselor. So is it specific? Is there?
So if a student, let's say, for example, a student is serving an in-school suspension, we've changed that room to a reset room, and a counselor is assigned throughout the day for one period a day in that room. So there's always a counselor in that room. So because sometimes we know that when when someone does anything, they need a little time, or they might not be ready to reflect in that moment, or maybe they're ready later. And so there is always a counselor in that room in addition to a supervising teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, I have two more questions. They're a little tough, okay, y'all? One is just around restorative justice being used to address racial disparities around racial slurs. And I'll be specific, like two things. Like one, we know that bias is still in our schools, and so I wonder how this practice is used to address that, particularly with students who've been on the bad side of the disparities. And then two, with the racial slurs, and I know I brought this up before, when Black students are casually using the N-word, that like, yeah, they're the perpetrator, but they're also the victim because it's internalized racism. It just is what it is. That's just facts. It's internalized racism. Black people didn't create the N-word. And so it got into their vocabulary, and it being in our vocabulary, and I'll say our because it was also in my vocabulary at one point, it got into our vocabulary because of racism. It's called colonization. And so Black students casually using it to feel a sense of belonging with each other, they're also the victim. And so I'm just thinking about like, how do you deal with that piece of it? Because I think an exclusionary practice with someone who's low-key victimizing themselves is like a drug addict. It's, and the other point to that is the implications of white teachers holding Black students account, like being the one to call them out for saying the N-word and bring them to the consequence. There's racism in that. Like, I know it sounds harsh, but like, it is a fact. Like, Black people didn't create the word. It's in our vocabulary because of racism. White teachers and white-bodied humans coming down punitive about it onto Black bodies in schools and having an exclusionary response to it is a perpetuation of racism. So I just want to understand, how are we dancing with that now?
Can I jump in on that? So, and I've
And
heard
it's not just, it's a bigger problem I know in our state too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue, but it's an impossible issue for us because I may be from a mixed family, so it's in my vocabulary as a child. My mom is, of this race, and my dad is of that race, and maybe I'm light skinned, maybe I'm dark skinned. Like there is not a fair way, the only way for us as a school district, and I respect your opinion on it, that it has some racism built within it, but we're not intending it to be racist. We're intending it to be
And tempers impact.
understood.
The impact is racism.
Well, no, the impact goes through our process, which our process is not, I'm just going to slap you with a consequence and send you on your way with any lack of understanding. I'm going to sit with you through this period. I'm going to talk about the impact of it. I'm going to talk about why it's not something that we should be doing in a school setting or, in a professional setting, or, if it's a workplace environment or something like that. And I'm going to try to, provide for an education and a repair, because interestingly, you said it used to be in your vocabulary. So it's not in your vocabulary. So something, created a change in that regard without passing judgment on how it got there or why it came out. Our goal, I think, is aligned. We don't, I make a statement, I've sent it out in letters: hate speech has no place in our schools. And it's not what you necessarily intended when you use that word, because we do have students who intend it, well, I can use that because that person's my friend, or I can use that because I, subscribe to this group, but I can use that with someone else, and the impact with them, and they could be the same color as me, they feel victimized, offended, they're very hurt. So there are impossible lines for us to draw. And in the same way, a white educator providing that consequence, a white educator trying to distinguish, it's okay for this person, but not that person, is equally racist. You know what I mean? So it's just impossible. So our approach, tends to be not so much what's the consequence that we're going to align with that, but what's the conversation that we're going to have, so that we can basically just try to get to a shared understanding and appreciation that it's not language that we think is appropriate for our schools. And if it's, I'm not going to pass a judgment on anyone if it's, something that they're using outside of school with their friends or what have you. That's not something I'm trying to judge or say is right or wrong. It's just I want to educate you on why, as a student, why it's problematic for us in the school setting to be using that language.
Right. And I get that part of it. I still think that it's not, I don't know. I work with folks all around the state. I work with districts all around the state. And I know that there are different approaches to this. And so I'm going to continue to challenge our district to challenge your response to it. Because I have to. I'm a Black woman. And I stand for social justice and I stand against racism and anti-Blackness. And I think the other part of it is, as a Black parent, I can say in this district I've been in for 5 years, I've never been approached as a parent about this conversation. And it's really a tier 1 issue. And so I'm just kind of thinking about are we going to keep reacting to it, or are we going to have the conversation that I think could and should be had around the use of the word, the casual use of the word? Otherwise, we're going to see those numbers in the disciplinary and the data. We're going to see the numbers in the data, and it's not going to give the accurate picture that you're asking for around how do we know those things? Because if some of those are casual use of the N-word, I'm going to feel differently about that than some of the white I'm Black or homophobic or anti-Semitic, the ones that I'm saying this to you because I want, they are different categories, and we won't get a clear picture when they're all matched together.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in again if I may. So the state is looking at exactly that question in terms of how it's being reported. The state's looking exactly at that question. But at the end of the day, the thing I wanted to add, because you're absolutely right, parent communication, buy-in, and understanding is very important. And I'd be curious if you guys would back me on this, but I've gotten to sit in on a few of the middle school conversations with Teresa on Saturdays, and the trends that we find when we look, my anecdote is what I believe is happening a lot. It's student to student. It's not just because I get to talk that way at home. That's not necessarily the catalyst that's creating the usage. It's student to student. It's student to social media, something that's popular, trending, popping in a song, or something that we saw in a movie, which is where we all get our, I'm of an age group, and this is what is popular, and so that has an influence on me, whether it's just exposure, something I've heard, or something that I now use. That's my personal choice. But I do think, to your point, I think that the communication with parents is good and necessary and going to help. But I think the communication with students in and around our expectations and their feelings on it, and helping them to unpack their feelings and why and all the rest, is even more powerful and responsive to kind of where the language is more commonly used. And I don't know, I've got students here, maybe they can even speak to some of that.
Before, I just want to add one more thing from what you just said. I think the other piece you mentioned, I guess two things. One is that, saying certain words results in a conversation. And from my understanding, saying certain words can result in an expulsion or some other sort of serious consequence. Well, maybe not an expulsion, but some sort of not a conversation. You're having some sort of serious consequence, like you're suspended or, what have you. Let me just finish 1 second, please. So that concerns me because I think when we talk about racial disparities, if Black students are more likely, let's say, to use that word and then are receiving a suspension or whatever the consequences, I want to be clear that it's not just a conversation. So I think we gotta be careful about how we're describing what happens. And then secondly, I am certainly no expert on restorative practices, but I know LaToya does this work. And so if we say something's impossible, I want to be very careful about that as well, because it sounds like other districts are doing it differently. So I want to hear the rest of this, but I'm not sure that we're all being very accurate with what we're saying here. So first, I want to know if that language is used, it sounds like there is a very serious consequence beyond a conversation. And then secondly, I'm curious to know how other districts handle this.
I can't report on other districts. I can get you that information and try to get back to you. I'll be very clear. From my perspective as your superintendent, this language has no place in our schools. All right? That's not a statement of what someone's intent is or the frequency of it. We do try to look at it from the lens of, and we've talked to, and I'll clarify my statement. If I wasn't clear, I'll apologize. The conversation part that happens, I'm trying to suggest, is the most important part. The consequence is the consequence. We do have consequences, and we have started to look at, we have adapted our policies to where if something is a targeted use, so I call you a name with the intent, with what seems to be from the investigation that they've described, a clear intent to hurt, demean, or diminish you, as opposed to it would seem clear from the investigation that this was a casual reference. We have tried to parse that out with levels of consequence, but we are not excusing. I'm not excusing anyone. In all cases, I want to send a very clear message that we feel that that's inappropriate. The consequence might be different with the understanding, but we're not going to divide that out along different lines. Like just because you have membership in a group doesn't necessarily excuse you, but we can look at what were the situations, and we can then try to have the reason that it's not that I'm trying to victimize anyone in a victim group to the point that you're making, which I understand and I don't necessarily dispute. It's my point is I'm not trying to victimize anyone with that. I'm going to take the opportunity to educate that this is just not language that we want to have in this setting. And so it's not that there wouldn't be a consequence, and it's not that all the consequences are the same. What I was trying to express at that point is that the conversation is the most important piece. We can look at what other districts are doing. I'm not, I apologize, I do not know if there's a specific example of something in your mind, but to the point, the state is also, not only are we kind of looking at the difference between a casual use, a targeted use, and then something that goes above and beyond to a point where there might be like police involvement, and now you're starting to change it from a description of hate speech to hate crime. The state is looking to, because they've catch-alled it, and there was never an expectation that the catch-all coding was going to get the same consequence or reaction from the school. It was just that I think the state didn't anticipate the frequency with which they're seeing some of these things and the need to kind of tease it out a little bit more specifically. So there's an effort underfoot at the state level, which will help to provide you guys some of the transparency that you're asking for on what does it really look like. Again, to my point, I've tried to be as transparent as I can. I've given you the number for our mid-year, and I know that you've asked if is that up or down or left or right from last year, and I owe you a response on that. So we'll be giving that to you when we report on it next.
Can I add a little context, because I think it's really important? I know you're going to kill me. I promise I will be brief. I think I want to put on the table. You started it. I want to put on the table something that I think that we are escaping, and I, as a Black person, I want to be super clear about this, because part of the problem that I have encountered is that there's also the supposition that all Black people are okay with this language. We are not, right? Some people are reclaiming it's a trauma-based response, and some people are holding firm because we don't think we can wash all the blood off of this word. And we collectively have decided that we live and let live, and we allow this, and we understand the discrepancy and why people are approaching it differently without judgment. It is not appropriate language for school. I stand on that. It's not appropriate language because, quite frankly, just because we share the same color, if you call me that and I jump myself back to my 17-year-old body in school, we would have a serious problem. And so it's not okay. It's not just, well, we're all Black people, we can all say it. And to give some factual context, there's also the supposition that the people who are using it are Black. That's not the data. And so, you know, I think it's really important to not make assumptions about who's using the word and why they're using the word, because that's actually not what the data actually shows. We're aware of that, and we're aware that just in general, we need to have a clear understanding that we don't use hate speech of any kind, whether it be anti-Semitic, whether it be anti-Black, whether it be anti-LGBTQ, like any of it, right? Our spaces are spaces that are intended to have everybody belong, and we are going to hold and we're going to stand on that because we don't have any other ground to stand. The rest of our world and country is falling apart on this. We cannot. Like, we have to hold. And so that is our stance. And we must make that our stance because we don't have a choice. And I personally, with my beautiful, light-skinned grandbabies, don't want anybody policing their bodies and giving a level of how Black are you. And so, like, for me, it's very important that we're, to your point, we have a predominantly white staff. I'm not putting them in the position of judging who's dark enough. If I'm Afro-Latino, am I allowed to say it because I have African blood and I now claim that and that makes it okay for me? Like, these are impossible situations to ask educators to kind of shift through. And if we can stand on the ground that all people deserve dignity and space and that some words just don't allow for that, then I do believe that is the safest ground for us to stand on. And we must stand on that ground because we can't trust that those conversations are necessarily happening in the home. And from the information from students, as Paul was aware in our group, the kids were very clear. Yeah, my parents would kill me if they knew I was using language like this. Like, this is not necessarily parent-condoned language for any group, right? But when kids are together, they talked about where their influences were, and I told them in that meeting, I'm like, oh, my heart is breaking because as parents, I have to tell you, we're hoping that when I ask you, where's your greatest influence coming from? And I would they're going around to give me answers, and I'm writing them down, and I'm mad. And I was like, I gotta be honest with you, as a parent, we're all hoping that you're gonna say yes, but I know that all research says that after 8, we're not it, right? And so that's food for thought for us, right? How do we still have those conversations, because it's important that we give that foundation, but then give room and space for allowing the schools to do what we must do, which is hold a really important moral line about us all belonging so that there's at least one place left that still believes that.
Thank you, I get that. And I think I just want to, my final point on this is I'm going to continue to challenge us around this. And this is why the conversation with our community is important, because Black community isn't a monolith. We're 2 Black women and we have different perspectives about this. But this is why the district has to have the conversation with families. And to your point, I have Black kids at my house. I'm cool with a lot of the Black community here, and the kids are learning to say it more casually at school to feel a sense of belonging with the small Black population in the school. Again, tier 1 issue. So it has to get addressed at the tier 1 level, not tier 3 when they've said it and now they're in trouble. Tier 1, whole community. So that's where my push is I'm gonna keep pushing on that. I'm gonna keep pushing on that, but it ain't personal.
I just want to say, Paul, Teresa, your whole team, I appreciate just the candor and just your ability to come. Oftentimes you sit at this table, you have no idea where we're going to go with any of this and whether or not you've prepared for this part of the presentation or not, but your willingness to be open and engage, I'm always impressed with it. And I thank you for the seriousness, the thoughtfulness, the reflectiveness with which you take all of this. Teresa, I thought your summation was really good. Paul, you said something in your last remarks I think is really at the heart of this. Is I think the intent component of that is really, really key and critical, and I think probably the fairest framework and scaffolding to go about doing something like this. So just, I appreciate you guys.
All right.
You're next. All right, we're moving on. We are moving on. We have next on the agenda, high school schedule exploration.
Excellent. As the team comes up, I just want to thank Mr. Scott Dunn, Principal Wolcott, Miss Christy Laverty, Principal at Duffy, obviously Teresa, and staying up there, Miss Sarah Isaacs. I appreciate you. She's being joined. You guys know Ann very well. I believe I don't know if you've met Eileen Eustace, our Director of Secondary Ed, but she is joined by Jocelyn Tamburello-Noble, our Principal at Conard High School, and Miss Patricia Pyers, Patty Pyers, our Director of School Counseling. So that is the team, a very esteemed team, very, very thankful for the work that they do and the leadership that they have. And I will turn it over to Ann.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. Our team has been anxiously looking forward to speaking with you about our high school schedule exploration, the process that we've undertaken. Our current schedule has some very real constraints in it and some very real constraints for students, all types of students in our schools. Students who struggle have constraints in this schedule. Students who are looking for opportunities and can't fit them in have constraints in this schedule. And our students who are taking everything that they possibly can often have to give up other things in order to do so. So with that, we would like to present to you on our work. I'm really excited just to make sure I have faces and names. We have Patty Pyres here. Patty, say hi. Hi. Patty's our great director, our department supervisor of school counseling, and Sarah's been here for hours, so hello, Sarah. And of course, Jocelyn. And Eileen. So we are really excited to talk to you tonight about this. It's very important work. We structured our presentation today, and I would ask if you could write down your questions and possibly hold them to the end, only because it's a little bit of a story here, and I'd like to be able to tell it well, so that you understand why we're so passionate about the fact that we think a change is necessary. So we're going to start off with some challenges. Then we'll talk about how other districts have responded to these challenges. We'll talk about our exploration, the process we took, and we'll talk to you about the new schedule we're proposing, and then we'll open it up to discussion. And again, if you have a burning question, feel free, but if not, maybe we can just go through the story and then take the questions. So I'd like to start off with the first challenge, and the most obvious is graduation requirements. With Connecticut Public Act 1742, it raised graduation requirements to 25 credits, and that is not a small thing. Our previous graduation credits, local credits that were aligned with the state, were 21.75, and we use the schedule we use. Now we have the exact same schedule where students need to get 25, and that has put pressure on our students all different ways. And many of our students do just great. They come up from middle school with math credits or Spanish credits, and other children want to take summer school, and they do all kinds of things. But there's also a lot of children who come up with no credits from middle school, and they want to take what they need to graduate. And they are one of the groups we're concerned with, but I would say not the only group. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, just please keep in mind, 25 credits in a system that used to only need 21.75. No changes to that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Patty.
Yep, so I'm going to walk you through what our typical schedule looks like. So we've got 25 credits that we need for graduation, but it's not just cumulative of 25 credits. It also means that we have certain what we call buckets that need to be filled. So there's a certain number of humanities credits, a certain number of STEM credits, wellness credits, so on and so forth. So you'll see with the way that a student is scheduled is they'll have their core courses, which we've got English, math, science, social studies, usually world language, wellness, pretty much every year for their 4 years. In scenario one, you see what a very typical freshman year schedule looks like. So you've got those core classes in there.
You'll see next to what our pretend period 4 is that we've got wellness. So wellness meets a couple of days a week, but it meets throughout the entire year. So that takes up an entire period. You'll then see we've got in our pretend period 5 a block for lunch. So that takes up the whole period with no opportunity to earn credit. Then at the end, we've got the opportunity for students to take one elective each year. And that's either 2 half-year electives or 1 full-year elective. Starting in sophomore year, there are science classes that have labs. So because of the lab, there's extra time that the students meet. They'll get an extra half of a credit with it. So that's why you see in grade 9, students can earn 6.5 credits. Grades 10 through 12, they can typically earn 7 credits. And we've got the same situation. The only difference is that the lab meets a couple days a week, and then wellness meets a couple days a week. So they wrap around each other. So those will take a full period. So so just want to point out that we've got in each opportunity only if students are taking their core classes, which they need for graduation, but also for preparation for college and post-secondary and career, you've only got that 1 extra period for elective, which then explains that challenge of making sure students have their graduation requirements on time. Back in the day, we had 21.75 credits. That gave us a good chunk of time that should a student have failed a class, they could still make it up during the school day without having to sacrifice a lot of other things. Because remember, we can't just not take English because we need those 4 years of English. So if they're failing something, they need to replace it. And we had a bigger buffer in order to make up those missed credits. You see with our graduation credit scenario 1, there's a little bit less of a buffer. In scenario 2, even more so, that we're just finding that students are going to have to sacrifice something during the day, or they're going to have to go to summer school, which for a student who's already struggling and has failed a class, now having to go to summer school for 6 weeks is very challenging for them, and we're not finding that we're able to engage those students. So although we say we have an 8-period day, we really only have a 7-period day.
I'm just going to go back to that schedule so they can see it there.
Yeah, so we really only have 7 periods for students to meet their graduation requirements, unless, again, now they're sacrificing lunch, which is something we'll talk about later on.
I just added that.
Yep.
So for many students, failing just one course, just one, means putting them at risk for on-time graduation. As if you came to high school and you failed 9th grade English, for instance, can you go to summer school? Do you take 9th and 10th grade English in 10th grade? You're taking it together. It's taking that elective. You don't have an elective. Maybe your passion is ceramics. Maybe it's art. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's world language. But you're not taking that because you still need to not only meet 25 credits, you have to meet a whole group of very specific credits within that. 9 in STEM, 9 in humanities, 1 world language, 1 art, 2 PE. So you have to do all those things. And we didn't go into great detail here because the 25 is the biggest issue. Mm-hmm. There's also issues with the types of credits you're earning.
Right, which further restricts their ability to make them up.
And then you have a child going through high school with possibly no electives. And that's not really the greatest thing for children who find passion in some of those areas.
One quick question.
We'll wait until the end for questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she asked us in the beginning. I think we're in the bathroom.
Sorry. We just want to tell a whole story first.
I was wondering what failing is. Is failing an F?
Yes.
Or yes.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to the high school principals.
So for us, the real concern is really on graduation, and for the fact that, especially as we speak about both high schools, but looking at Conard, it is impacting graduation rates. And the fact that we are up to the nth minute right before graduation to make sure that our students really have the courses and the credits that they need. And so previously with 21.5, there was wiggle room. And at this point, there's really not. And so the options for credits and all of those other options are very limited under the current schedule.
And the trend exists at Hall as well, as you can see on the chart. Moving to the next slide, when we talk about the proposed schedule, it really expands the capacity and the safety nets. And I think a point that is important too, it's not just that students are failing. Our teachers work really hard, our students work really hard, our parents work really hard. We want everyone to pass, want everyone to learn. But there's also just extenuating circumstances that can happen, whether it's a health issue, something happens in your family. I mean, there's just lots of reasons why a student may not be able to take that many classes, and then they're in a space where we are working and they are working and families are working so hard to creatively get them to that finish line. And so creating this expanded capacity and these safety nets really allows for, if something were to happen, whether you just have a bad semester, something happened in your family, something happened with your health, that then it doesn't, we can make that up and also provide those other opportunities for those electives. And so this proposed new schedule increases that total credit capacity and creates that, what you'll see as a 7-credit buffer, and also allows for that recovery that reduces that stress on students.
And as we also consider students with other specialized services, it allows more room on the schedule to be able to support and having them engage in courses that typically they might not even have been able to take in their schedule.
So as you see on this slide, the proposed new schedule with up to 32 credits, and not that we want children to take 32 credits, by the way, I want to be clear. We don't necessarily want them to. We just want to have it available for them to take what they want. A lot more buffer in this kind of schedule. And believe me, the old schedule worked well when we had 21.75. There's no criticism of that schedule. I give credit to the counselors, to Patty, to the high school principals. They work with children all through their 4 years, especially the children who are struggling right at the end, to make sure they are very, that their schedules come together, because it's not just the number 25, it's the kind. With inside, they might have to take a phys ed in summer school because they can't fit it into their senior schedule and they won't graduate on time. They might have the 25, but they don't have one in English or something like that. So they're very creative, but there's just a lot of pressure. It's a tight buffer, and that's why I really want to point out the green bar will expand that buffer, and then we'll go into the health benefits as well. So we're going to switch over to the student wellness fact. This is another challenge that we see.
Yeah,
Patty?
so that's what we've been talking about, is that when we do have that challenge of not having that big buffer for students to be able to take classes, for those students who are failing classes or students who want to enrich their schedule, they're sacrificing, a lot of them, almost 28% of our students are sacrificing lunch in order to get either make up of a class or expand their interests. And it's, as we saw in that schedule before, there's only one period a day for students to take electives. And electives are hugely important, not only for students who want to challenge themselves academically to get into the most prestigious colleges that they can, but also for those students who want to think about what they might want to do for a career and to be able to explore some of their potential career pathways, but also those students who just have a passion for something and want to be able to explore that during the school day. And in order to get that in there, so for example, like a student who's playing an instrument, that student can't take any other elective for all of their high school career unless they're dropping a core course or they're dropping their lunch. And we don't want that to happen.
They can't drop a core course.
No.
So that means they drop lunch.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we don't want students to have to drop lunch for several reasons. And as you can see, one of the most important reasons that we start with is just your students' health. Students are still growing in body and in mind, and we want them to be able to have the nutrition they need to be able to perform at their highest capacity.
And I'll just add 2 other things here. One is, I don't want you to think the children don't eat. The teachers actually do everything they can to allow the students a break. Here, have your granola bar or something. And they allow that because they know students are dropping lunch to take their course. But for a student who has free and reduced lunch, for instance, they have to go to the cafeteria, get that food first, and then go. So that's a little bit of an issue as well. There's also, I think of some of our special education students who need a content support class. That goes in and they get credit for it, but that takes the place of their electives too. And so now you have special education students who don't have the chance to take as many elective courses. And of course, the lunch issue, so.
Yep, and, sorry.
Go back?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not done yet.
But then the also issue too, just of having a scheduled break in a student's day is hugely important. Not only just to have that brain break, if you will, but then also to have the ability to interact with other students casually, socially is hugely important for their social, emotional well-being. What we see a lot of times is that our students don't just go to school and then go home. So we've got students who potentially are dropping lunch. They are taking 8 classes throughout the day. Then they're going to their orchestra practice or their drama club or their 3-sport athlete, and then not coming home until maybe 5 o'clock at night, maybe later, having a quick dinner, and then having to do all their homework in preparation for the next day. And what we're seeing is a huge uptick in the number of students who are saying, I can't do it, but I have to do it. And so the anxiety is through the roof. And we're seeing so many more doctor's notes coming in saying we need accommodations because we can't do it all.
And in that scenario, they're remembering homework in 6 classes, 6 to 7 classes. They're remembering homework. And if they're that student, maybe 8.
Mm-hmm. So even just having that little break in the day for lunch is huge for these students. So continuing with that student wellness piece, and I think a 5 o'clock end time for some of our students would be very early.
True.
Yeah, right. And I think there is something so vibrant about our after-school community, whether it is, like, I know there are jazz dancers right now practicing for Pops and Jazz. I know there are students, if there's a hockey game or a basketball game, there's all these things going on throughout the evening, or a Board of Ed rep. And we want them to have all those experiences. When we talk about what the day could look like when you're we talk about the adults they see in a day, if you're seeing 8 different adults with different expectations and different, classroom cultures and different, you're navigating all those personalities all day. And it might not seem like a lot, but to think about 8 different people you're going to see and respond to in a day, that's a lot just in your emotional load, right? And so we think that fewer transitions would decrease that cognitive load, allow them to really delve in on 4 classes a day instead of if they took up to 8 or maybe 4 or less with what you're going to see when we talk about the schedule, and having that just reduces that mental fatigue. And really allowing them to focus. And then also when you think about homework, you've had just 4 classes instead of 8 classes. If you're someone that chooses to take up to the full load that you could.
And I think the other piece is it really does become an equity and access issue, because we are making a lot of assumptions that if a student is back and behind on credits, that they have a summer opportunity or a summer free to be able to then earn those credits. And that's not always the case for our students. They are sometimes the secondary providers. They are other expectations related to what they can do. We also want to make sure that there is really equity in terms of scheduling for program access. We have a lot of students that are interested in our work-based learning programs. Those programs occur in the afternoon. Having a larger block would allow them to pursue some of the trades that they're interested in, apprenticeships. There's some opportunities that would expand, certainly, under this schedule for all of those students.
So in the cognitive load considerations and the instructional design, you have, longer instructional blocks that really allow for more in-depth instruction, to have more inquiry, to have more creativity for teachers and students. Personalized time, teachers are seeing half the students they would see in the day. They'd only see half their caseload. And then also slowing that pace benefits student mental health. And, we have done discussions at Conard and Titan Talks at Hall, and I've had some students say to me, but we didn't ask for block schedule. And my answer to them is, well, I don't expect you to, because you're not educators. But what you're telling me is I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I'm tired, and I'm hearing that year to year. And I think Jocelyn is, I don't want to speak for her, but hearing very similar things. We are seeing an increase in students presenting with anxiety and mental health concerns. And this is an answer to that. And so I didn't expect students to say, do you know what we want? Block schedule. But what I do expect is, as the educators and the professionals in the room, that when you tell me all of those things, I need to act and we need to act and to do something about it. And this is an answer that provides that.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
And students sometimes, you know, when they come in and they're talking to Sarah and I, they're really talking about the impact of mental health and the fact that the high-paced environment, not just of our high schools, but just sometimes the pressure of pieces of being in West Hartford, is really the fact that there's this constant pace and this expectation. And sometimes we need to set the structures for our children because sometimes they don't really understand how to set it for themselves. And so being able to be the experts in this, to be able to say, here's a structure that would work for our students across the board, because it provides supports and more opportunity and more access, is certainly something that I think we should be looking at supporting.
So we certainly weren't the only district in Connecticut that experienced PA 1742. And so Eileen and I did a lot of research on how did other districts respond?
So as you can see, there's a list of 20 surrounding towns. And if you take a look at the list, you'll notice that with the exception of Rocky Hill, they all have some form of a longer instructional block built into their schedule, okay? In addition to that, and this would include the Rocky Hill schedule, is that they do all have an opportunity for students to earn 8 credits. So not only are there 8 period, like we would call it's a true 8-period day because one of those periods is not used for lunch, if that makes sense, right? So your lunch is actually built into your class period, so it doesn't actually take up a whole class period, which is what our current schedule does now. Hopefully that makes sense for everybody. So just to let you know, we also, we've been in talks with a number of districts. You can see the ones that are asterisked. We've actually had more recent conversations just further in depth in terms of how did they get their schedule to work, if the schedule is actually meeting the needs of their students, how are they implementing support and intervention in different and creative ways, what type of support did they provide for teachers as they transition to longer block periods. And, another question we also asked was, if you had an opportunity to go back to a more traditional schedule, would you? I think it is a fair response to say they all said no, they would not go back. So they might make certain adjustments, but all of them would maintain some sort of longer instructional block with fewer classes during the day, okay? So this sort of also leads us into part of our schedule exploration process. So I know, I feel like, I know some people are feeling like, oh, this is happening so quickly, but we've been talking about this probably since Ann and I entered into our current positions, which was the fall of 2023. So when we entered into these positions, immediately we were presented with questions about, are we ever going to explore a new schedule? And so just to let you know that that really prompted us to start thinking about it. And if we were going to engage in a process, we felt like it was really important to make sure that we had some guiding principles. You don't want to make a change just for the sake of making a change. For a schedule, you want to ensure that we're doing it with purpose, right? And to really make sure that there is a true need to make a change. So just to let you know, part of that process was we did have some initial surveys with staff. We also had some student focus groups, and we put together this set of guiding principles based on some feedback. And you can see many of these things have already been addressed in the earlier part of the presentation. So the opportunity to earn more credits, the longer instructional blocks, and so forth. One of the things I do want to note, the last bullet also talks about increasing the number of professional learning community teams. We currently have some teams, teacher teams, that are able to meet on a weekly basis where they actually analyze student data, performance data on a regular basis as it's aligned to our curriculum. So, and the purpose of doing that is how can they go about and intervene with students before they get to those summative assessments and ensure that students are learning the essential standards. We feel it's really important for all of our teachers to engage in that practice, and by going to a full 8-period day, that actually would increase the probability for us to have all teachers engage in that practice. So I just want to make an important note about that. While primarily our needs are about students for this schedule, there are some benefits for teachers as well in terms of that work, which would then translate to student achievement and performance and ensuring that they're learning the essential standards. So just to sort of, and this was broken down a little bit in the report that you received. So again, back in the fall of 2023 and really throughout the year, a number of many different stakeholders were coming up and asking us about the possibility of exploring a schedule. So that's, then come the fall of 2024 is when we really launched into, okay, let's really gauge interest. So we did go out, and that is when we basically started to have some initial meetings. We went in front of the faculty at the middle as well as the high school level, and we did some surveys about, are you really interested in this? Okay. And we did get an overwhelming response of, yes, we feel an exploration is worth the process, engaging in a process. So we tried to be really thoughtful about the type of process that we would engage in. We didn't want to engage a huge committee that would take a lot of time and potentially result in nothing. So what we tried to do is basically try to work in and out, right? Have some people behind the scenes doing the work, continue to go back out to various groups and get feedback. So that's where we started to get into stakeholder input, community, and also community outreach and research, where again, we were doing with the stakeholder feedback, we had student focus groups, we had multiple staff listening tours, we did go out to the PTOs as well as SEPTO at that time, and then based on the feedback that we were receiving, we were starting to do research. We started gathering any schedule that anybody proposed or asked us to take a look at from other districts. So then we started to engage in terms of model refinement, and over the summer we did additional listening tours. We recently just re-met with the PTOs. We were having deeper discussions with other districts as felt like we were getting more serious about this possibility. We also recently we just had a student panel of students that actually are currently living a block schedule from various high schools, and I want to credit Jocelyn and Sarah and Patty who worked on putting that together. That happened last week, and the students that were on the panel were amazing, and really were very honest of what it's like to live in a schedule like that. And some will say, yeah, if you're sitting in a 90-minute lecture, that may not be great. But it was really good feedback for the teachers to also hear as well in terms of what makes a longer class block engaging. So there was a lot of benefit to that. So I also want to let you know that we're also working on, that we have been working for the last several months in terms of plugging all the holes that might come up as problems. So I know one of the things that's out there is that if I take an AP Science, I won't be able to take a full 8 credits or engage into electives. And we have found a solve for that. So we have a solve for that. So because we do know we have a large number of students that currently take 8 credits because they drop a lunch at this point. And we wanted to ensure that we will still be able to continue with being able to provide an opportunity for students to engage in 8 credits. But we're also, again, as we've been discussing, talking about students that don't even have that opportunity in the first place, okay? And how can we bolster their opportunities in terms of elective interest and also providing that safety net that we were talking about.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to ask a clarifying question because I heard something that didn't sound right to me earlier. Might have just been some misinformation. You were saying there was a concern about taking an AP chemistry and taking 2 electives, which is the issue, not AP chemistry and taking 1 elective. That will have absolutely no problem. And now you're saying that you've found a solution. So not only can they take 1 elective with AP chemistry, but 2 electives.
Yes.
I just want to clarify that.
Just not 3 as a junior.
Yeah.
And
and the point about that is it doesn't mean that they're sacrificing their lunch period. so they can take 8 credits and still have a designated lunch.
So to the lunch point, is there going to be a cap on kids? Like, so will you be telling students as school counselors or administrators, no, you cannot skip your lunch?
It will be, we'll show you how it's embedded.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was just thinking a lot, a lot of times when you create more space, people will just fill it.
No, they won't be able to.
Okay.
And I think, I'm sorry, one other thing that I just wanted to address about like where we are in the process right now is that we do recognize that students are requesting courses. We have worked with school counselors to, we've provided credit windows that would be appropriate for students, and we do recognize that we want to be ready to move forward with this. And with that, we need their requests. However, if we cannot move forward with this for next year, we do have a process and a plan in place to address that. And it really would be needing to deal with the students that have, I would say, over-requested. So currently, we have students, you can request up to 8 credits if you choose to drop your lunch. Okay, so again, I just want to assure everybody we have, we've already discussed a process in place, like if we have to remain with the current model.
That's me? Okay, sorry. So I just wanted to show you what an 8-period day, I'm sorry, what the AB skinny, what a skinny Wednesday would look like. And so instead of having 8 classes a day, let's say A day is a Monday, and the students would take 4. The C block is a longer block, and lunch is embedded inside of C block. Now, this is going to get in the weeds for you, but we were a little bit constrained by the type of schedule we have because we have to provide 4 lunches for safety purposes. A lot of schools only have 2 or 3 lunches, so their lunch waves are therefore shorter and they have more options. We had fewer options because we have over 1,300 students. 400 plus students, 450 students in lunch isn't ideal, so we have to have 4 lunch waves, and that limited the number of schedules that would work for us. But the one that seems to work best is an AB day. The addition of a skinny Wednesday does not have to happen. It's just in the feedback from the teachers, their biggest fear was losing regular contact with students, and therefore this was not a vote or anything of that nature. We just read comments and comments and comments and codified them and counted them, and it seemed to be the most popular because they would see their children 3 times per week. The B day, you would see a different set of classes, and what's nice about this schedule, it embeds lunch inside your class. You can't skip it then. You can't put a class inside of a class, so you cannot skip it. It still allows you to have electives, more than 1 elective if you like. Even if you take lab science, we can work with you on that. And we have found a solution for what we call our super music kids who take at least 2 music classes, and their honors in both of those, and they want to take AP science, and they want to do everything they're doing. Some students want to do even more than they're doing now. That will not work. It will not work, but especially in the junior year and the sophomore year where a lot of things are really packed in. The senior year, often by that time, you have met many requirements. You've met your world language requirement. You've met your 3 science requirements. You've met your math requirements. English is the only one that's 4, or you met your social studies requirements. So you have a little more play in your senior year. But we have found a solution that will allow students to take what they're taking now, that allows for more electives, that embeds lunch so you can't skip it, that slows the pace of the day, and we think it is a really appropriate solution to a very constrained schedule. In this, and as we said, students will have the opportunity to take many more credits, expanding the buffer. And also I actually think we can do some very creative things with intervention within the day if we are allowed to move forward with this schedule.
The one other thing I just want to note is, we talked about the fact 32 credits is not for everybody. Right. And so the other thing too is we do talk about, we have a very heavily involved student population outside of school. And one of the things that a schedule like this, it would also offer an opportunity to have some time during the school day if I need to get extra help, if I just need some quiet time to get started on some homework, if I want to have a study group with some students. So again, I could choose to take a class, but I could also choose to take a study hall. So I just want to provide that point of clarification as well.
So just in summation for this schedule and what it highlights is, it enhances the depth of instruction because it gives more time for teachers, for students in the classroom to allow for real inquiry-based, to really bring in labs, and really enhance instruction. I think it's a great opportunity for all of our teachers to look at that. It reduces that daily transition and that lunch for all. I do have students saying to me, well, I have to go to the cafeteria. I have to go to the cafeteria. And that's not what everyone wants. So we are working across both schools to provide spaces. It's really just about providing that 30 minutes where you are not, where you can take a breath. And whether it's through the cafeteria, we have a lot of outside spaces, tables, games. When it's nice, I said to kids today, not today. Today's not the weather for it. But, we really have a lot of time in the fall and in the spring for that outdoor time. Allowing for students to access the library, our academic resource center, their teachers if they want to have an appointment with a teacher. And then again, we're piloting a senior lounge this year for students to have some space, again, some downtime. So the lunch doesn't always have to look like lunch in the cafeteria. There's a lot of, in our career center, so a lot of spaces where students can just have that moment to breathe, spend some time with friends, and have that social interaction. We think that all the classes meeting on Wednesday really provides a great touch point so that everyone gets to see their whole schedule that day. And then, providing that opportunity as we look across the schedule, that flexibility of what we think we can do as far as that tiered intervention process and enrichment.
So this is going to time me out in a second, it looks like. I'd like to wrap it up by saying our goal is, our real goal is not simply a schedule change. It's to create a stronger system that makes success more likely for every student. We have a really successful program. We're very proud of it. Under the 21.75 credits, that pressure just, wasn't there. That's there now. So we are ready for your, thank you so much for being patient. Let us telling the story because it was an important story to get out, but we are more than happy to start discussion. This might time out, but we can still keep talking.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Yeah, appreciate it. Any questions?
So I think I know the answer, but I'd rather hear it from you. You have 21.75 credits before. You're now at 32.
25. Now we're at 25.
You're at 25, but you're trying to get to 32.
No.
Oh.
We had 21.75 required credits for graduation. Now we have 25. Our schedule, we need to expand our schedule to make more of a buffer so
Right,
students
so-
can earn those 25.
When you expand the schedule, is the amount of time per day going to expand?
No.
Or is the amount of time per class going to reduce?
There'll be fewer classes per day. There'll be fewer classes per day. There'll be 4 classes per day.
No, I got that.
Okay. So those are longer blocks, we think between 86 and 88-minute blocks. But because you're taking 4 classes on an A and 4 classes on a B, you can earn 8 because lunch is now embedded. Lunch is not its own period. Lunch is now embedded in a block.
I'll jump in with a couple of things are going to happen, if I may. I apologize. With 8 periods, you have all the transitions, the 7 transitions you need. So we're going to recoup some of that transition time because there's fewer transitions. So we're going to steal back 16 or 17 minutes there. Lunch is going to go from 48 minutes down to 30. So we're going to squeeze 18. We're going to steal 18 minutes there. But given the every other day, like if I added up, if I'm being transparent, if I added up the total number of minutes across the year, I might lose a couple of minutes across the year for any one given class, if I understand it. But so the short answer is The length of the school day is going to remain the same for students, for staff, for everybody else. I have some savings of time in a school day, but overall, because right now we're only set up to teach 7 classes a day, 7 classes in a week, and we'll be technically teaching 8, the ability to have 8 classes in a week. We will, there's some squeezing of total amount of instructional time.
I don't have a problem, I'm just.
No, I'm just trying to explain, give you the straight answer to your question.
Something's got to give mathematically.
Yes.
So that's the give.
Say again?
That's the give.
Each individual class would meet a few less minutes
All
a
right, that's what I
week.
was going for.
However, if a student opts to take an additional class, they've now actually increased the number of instructional minutes available to them as a student. Because now I have an opportunity to pick up an additional class that I didn't have before.
All right, now you answered my question. My second, or I guess my concern, just listening, and part of it was comments that were made earlier, is when's the drop dead date, or at some point, I assume you have to make a decision.
Yeah, I'll be
We need
making
to
a
market this.
I'll be making a decision on this by the time we present the budget. We wanted to get this in front of you as a board so that we could hear any questions and concerns. And equally, we wanted to get this in front of the full community with accurate information. And I'll be very honest. We went to a block schedule during COVID because we needed to for social distancing, right? Many of you will remember that. Our high school seniors at the time overwhelmingly loved it. Our middle school students at the time, who guess what, are our high school seniors now, hated it because it was very difficult on our middle school. And when you think about the transition from middle school, you're going from an elementary setting with no real changing classes other than art and music, to now all changing classes, and then they had a block schedule on top. That's a sea change. And so I very much understand that among our student body, which is why I compliment this team for bringing in peers from other towns who live in a block who could give them straight talk. They weren't paid or promoted or anything like that. And as I understand it, I didn't get to see all of it, but they gave honest answers to honest questions from students, and they told the good and the bad. But I think one of our, I can't remember which presenter said it, maybe it was Sarah, this team has really looked into this comprehensively and thoroughly, and didn't, I recognize there's probably, if I asked 100 students, there's 100 different opinions. We're not trying to make the decision, we're trying to be responsive to all of the concerns that those 100 perspectives bring and provide our best educated response to those concerns.
That's it. My comment was more whether they should be or shouldn't be, when you're making this major a change, you want to market it or sell it to the students. Just my opinion.
I understand and I agree. I want the students to like it, but I know that change is a big scary thing, and people don't like anything until they've done it. Understood. Yeah. Understood.
I just want to thank all of you for an extremely thoughtful presentation and for all the time you've put into researching this and coming up with what seems to be the most comprehensive and probably best solution to really significant mental health stressors for our students. And I think you've gone a long way to create a humane schedule that's going to expand opportunity for everybody. So I just want to just congratulate all of you for that and just thank you for everything you've done there. And express my support for the program. And I guess the only question I would have, this goes to implementation, and that's to Rachel's question earlier. Will students who are in the process, if this is approved, and I sincerely hope it is, are students who are in the process of designing their schedules now going to have the opportunity to make changes?
I'll address that, and I'll let Patty address that too. But when students make their schedule now, they don't know when those classes are going to land. So they just write down requests. They don't say, I want AP Chemistry, period 1, and I'd like to have wellness around here, and I'd like to, at the end of the day, I really want ceramics. They don't do that now. They just tell us what they want. And we told them, tell us what you want no matter what. And we are building the 8 right now, the 4x4 right now, the AB. And if for some reason we hit such a serious snag that we shouldn't implement it for a variety of reasons, then we would implement it the following year. So it is still, sometimes when you see such an urgent need, you don't want to wait. And I see an urgent need. To be honest, the more I research, the more I talked with Eileen. Eileen and I talked to other districts. We talked to Glastonbury the other day. Would you go back? No way, never. The pace of the day is so much more humane. You're not moving every 47 minutes, and you're not juggling as much. I personally have taught in both. No schedule solves every problem. No schedule is a panacea. I've taught in both. I do prefer the block, but any schedule can work. The big problem is the graduation requirement, the limits on our students. That's the biggest problem right now, and it's really for everyone. I really appreciate the principal's responses when children said, we didn't necessarily ask for this, and we said, but you've asked for it in every other way. You've told us how stressed you are. So Patty, did you want to?
Yeah. I think when counselors are going in to meet with students, we're talking to them about is finding the right fit and a good balance. So we don't anticipate, probably get like 30% of students who want to request 8 credits because that's what we're seeing already. Everyone else would be requesting basically what they've been requesting in the past. But what we're saying is give us your best case scenario, and then once the master schedule is built, we're going to try and fit everything in. To get a perfect 8-period day would be fabulous for students, but likely we might run into some conflicts, in which case students are going to have to make choices anyway. So what we're hoping for is that students have the opportunity to put in up to those 8 credits, and then hopefully it all fits in together perfectly. And if not, yes, we will be meeting with students to make choices and to make some changes if needed.
And that's normal now in the 8-period day, that every once in a while there's singletons. We might only run one AP Chinese class that might run up against the one honor solo choir or something, and you have to make choices. Everyone does, but this schedule will not force more choices than, more conflicts. In fact, I think it's going to solve some.
Hi, thank you so much. I just have a quick question. I noticed in the community outreach or the principles of engagement dialogue with WHEA. So I'm wondering, how does this impact teachers' curriculum prep, and what does that look like for their workload? That's my first question. And then I guess related is, do the schools the districts who already have block scheduling, have they noticed changes in their student achievement rates? I understand this is specifically about graduation and that's the focus, but I'm just curious if there's any related impact on that as well. Thank you.
So just remind me, your first question was the
impact
teachers,
on
right?
teachers, yes.
So yes, the teachers, we've talked directly to them many times. I've met with each high school staff, Eileen and I, at least 3 times, I think. We've gone on listening tours, at least 2. We take copious notes. I think 2 weeks ago I was there for 11 hours, just having teachers drop in and tell me what their concerns are. Sure, they're nervous about change. A lot of them support, some don't. They're nervous about the change. They're most nervous about when are we going to make, when's the final decision? I keep telling them we're going ahead. We're building the 4x4 now, the AB now. And if we hit a major snag, and we may hit something where we would delay it for a year. So we would like to come by March into a decision by this March of if we realistically can put it in for next year. We do need to train teachers. The principals have a plan to use sometimes on their Wednesdays, and the department supervisors have a plan. So one of the plans would be that in large group, the principals and other leaders share what lesson structures can look like. Obviously, one plan for 90 minutes probably won't be great. You might need to have 2 or 3 plans for 90 minutes, or a 30-minute and a 60-minute. How do you break up the time? What kind of activities work? What's the best for engagement? Can I do more labs, more scenarios, more? I love to teach with simulations when I was a teacher. So as a social studies teacher, loved to do mock congresses and, election voting and all scenarios. And those are times where kids can come in and really debate and argue before the bell rings and they've got to go. So we have teacher training. We've talked to them. We have had one meeting with the WHEA, and we will continue meeting with them to hear their concerns. There may be some bargaining issues that we go through with the WHEA if it impacts our contract. So we're prepared to do that. I think we have a scheduled meeting a week from today, I think, with them. So we will continue, and we'll make this decision as quickly and responsibly as we can. And if for some reason we can't move forward, I just want it to be clear the year after, we will be moving forward. That would give us one more year. The only pain to wait one more year is that, you know, it's a lot of pressure on our kids. And so I hope I answered. Did you have a second part to that? Yes, you did.
Was if the change in block and that model has
student
impact
achievement.
on student achievement, yes.
Yeah, we do not ask that question directly for a lot of reasons, but we have looked at their data. So I've looked at Avon's, Glastonbury, everyone's data when it comes to this. And one of the hard things about the data is Avon made the change earlier than anyone. They did this in 2016. So they're probably the one that is, and they're very consistent. They don't have a great jump or a great decline. But in the meantime, a lot of people went directly after COVID. So now you're comparing pre-COVID student achievement numbers with COVID numbers, and they were in recovery during the beginning of it, and now they're post-recovery, so it's kind of hard to tell. And I want to be clear, this is, aside from graduation rates, this is not being done at all for student achievement. We have really strong student achievement, and where we have work to do, we know what we have to do, and this is not in order to address that. Although I do believe we can add some more interventions, and I do believe we can get more teachers in PLCs, which is really, really good professional time to look at student work and say, what did they not understand in this key standard? What do we need to do about it in Tier 1? I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Jason.
Just thank you as always for a very thorough presentation. I echo a lot of what John was saying and being very supportive of this. You also preempted a lot of what I had because I think the main questions and the feedback of which I actually got a lot on this topic as opposed to other topics, so it's out there, is, you know, let's call the, you know, the issues created for the highly motivated and then the issues for the block that may need more intervention. And I think you guys have already addressed that they're going to be just fine, if not better off. I'm just curious, are there any other trade-offs you see are there benefits to our current schedule that we don't get with the block schedule, or, you know?
Well, it seems to, I think that when you listen to the teachers and to some extent the students, if they miss school. So if you miss school now, you miss all your classes and you have to see all those teachers, but you miss one class. So now if you miss school one day, you missed maybe more content. So people are worried about that continuity. And that is a real concern. And the other is the touch points. In some disciplines, some teachers really feel, I need to see them every day. I need to see them every day. So those are the two biggest concerns that came from teachers. Can I see them every day? And that's really where we said the Skinny Wednesday came out as very much a comment in our feedback. It was by far the one that was commented upon most, being some, at least I can see them 3 times. They also, so those would be the 2 things to really think about. Absences, they'll affect children differently. If it's one day, they won't miss many classes, but they'll miss more content in each class they miss. And then the other is the touch points. So yeah, no schedule is perfect. This will not be perfect, but we do believe it will address really pressing issues. And what I'm most excited about is for every group of students. I don't know how our students here at the table, but I have had 2 of my children go through our system, and they always say, gosh, when I got to high school, I thought I'd take more electives. I wish I could. I have one who was kind of music-y. She didn't think of music as her elective because she's been singing since like 2 years old in the backseat of the car, so she thinks that's just normal. And the other just was like, I wanted to take more electives. I got to take 1 or 2 or maybe 3, but, you know, they think in high school, that's when I choose, you know. But they don't choose as much. In this schedule, I believe they will have more choice.
Sorry, Jesus.
Bless you.
Always with my voice. I had a question. I don't know if this is an appropriate time for me to ask.
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I was wondering, because Wednesdays will have 9 periods as well as lunch, right?
Ms. Eustace can answer that.
And actually, right now, we currently have 8 periods. It will actually be a 9-period day because one of those periods would be lunch for students on that day. Because everything, including lunch, will be 30 minutes, 32 minutes, roughly, okay, on that Wednesday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does make sense.
Okay.
Will we be cutting the community period?
We haven't worked, in our mock schedules, we haven't worked it in yet. We will not be cutting it. Haven't worked it in yet. It will probably work in on Wednesday the best, as we've seen, but we haven't, we have a couple, we have, not a couple. We have
What's community
1,000
period?
Sorry.
They'll explain it.
So community is Wednesday, it's attached to the period 2 class, and it's 20 minutes. The period 2 class is extended by 20 minutes, and that's where we have on, like for tomorrow, we start with our celebrations around the school, and then we use that time where we're doing our breaking bias pieces, and we're also celebrating Black History Month. It's a space where we do community celebrations and honor different groups and pieces. So that's something that we're going to look at, how we can make sure that we can protect that time for students. And it looks like right now, as we work through it, that Wednesday would be the best time for that. And we also think there's a great opportunity to look at that structure and make sure that we're optimizing it.
Will that shorten periods from 30 minutes then? Like smaller than 30 minutes on Wednesdays?
We are, yes. So currently Wednesdays are 32 minutes. And we have a couple different models. They will come down a little. One of the goals we did not achieve in this model is the optimized Wednesdays. If we went to a straight A-B rotating with no skinny Wednesday, the Wednesday classes would be in a really nice spot. They'd be about 60 to 65 minutes. It'd be really nice. But it seemed to be unbalanced that seeing children at least 3 times a week was a little bit more popular than optimizing Wednesdays. So Wednesdays will still feel like they do.
Okay.
Maybe a little worse because you're going to be moving a little different maybe. There'll be that movement, but every other day will feel a lot slower, deeper, and calmer feeling because you're not moving, you're not juggling as many things each day.
Okay, thanks. And I had a second, or were you about to say something?
But I want to make one comment about the Wednesday is that when we do, and this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but when we do have a week where you miss a day, like, right, we miss a lot of Mondays, we actually would not have the skinny Wednesday. We would move the block to Wednesday because that way you don't lose a full block period, especially if you think about it, you lose a lot of Mondays. And we don't want them to miss out on that instructional time. So you'll also on some Wednesdays, I think we counted the weeks. Next year, how many was it?
Next year's actually less, but this year we applied to this year, and there was at least 9 different weeks where you missed a Thursday because there was a High Holy Day. You missed a Monday because it was Indigenous People Day. We added all those up. There were 9 of them. So if that was the case next year, each one of those we would take whatever day was missed and we'd put it on Wednesday. We'd skip the skinny Wednesday that week. And that would, we think that makes sense because you teach class twice. Wednesday would be a little shorter, but at least you'd have a really good, strong period there.
You'd get about a 65-minute period that day.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one more question, sorry. I was wondering how we ended up choosing A-B block scheduling and not, I saw some other variations on the board, like 8 drop 2 rotating schedules. So I was wondering how we ended up here.
So part of what Ms. McKernan had discussed previously was one of our constraints is that we need to have a schedule that will accommodate 4 lunch waves. And when you build 4 lunch waves in the middle of the day, you need 2 hours, okay? And so some of those models just don't work well. So when you'll see one that's like an 8 drop 2 model, meaning it's 8 periods, you drop 2 a day, so you only have 6 classes in a day. In order to run a schedule like that, you have to build this super block in the middle of the day and run all 8 periods through. And then all the other periods end up being about 53 minutes. And we're like, why would you do this big schedule change for an additional 5 minutes when you're really trying to go for a longer block of instruction? So that was it limited what our options were. You know, if you get to a point where enrollment is down so much, which I just don't see that happening here, where you could get to 3 lunch waves, there are definitely other models that would be viable and more available, but many of them just don't work. And that was really an important, that safety component during the lunch waves is really important for us.
Thank you.
Question for you. I realize this is still conceptual, but if you were to do the AB block, you said you were going to do it before budget or around the time of budget. How do you see it impacting the budget?
Well, Thank you. I just want to be clear on your question. How does this new schedule impact the budget, is your question?
How do you perceive it
Yes.
doing that?
So we have worked with our high school schedulers. We have two excellent high school schedulers, Nicole Rule at Hall, Danielle McGee at Conard, and we have asked them to look at the schedule we have now and look at if the current schedule could fit in this and how would that impact FTE. And we do not see a dramatic change in that, even though some students will take more classes. You might say, well, that will definitely drive the FTEs up. But there's a lot of reasons why that won't happen. Some things just naturally don't schedule, and that's going to continue to happen. Each day you're going to have, on a Monday you're going to have a first period, and on Tuesday you're going to have a different first period. Juniors and seniors often like to come, they take that period as a late arrival. There's actually 2 opportunities for that. They do that at the end of the day too. So some students, like even my senior last year, decided she could take one elective or she could go home. And she decided, because she was a swimmer and multiple sport athlete, she'd go home a little early. So some of those things will work out. But the short answer is, in our projections right now, we do not see a dramatic difference in FTE. There's always slight differences, and we won't know till we actually run, but all of our current projections don't see any dramatic change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Sorry I'm sniffly. This room is stuffy. But no, it was so great, so comprehensive. I'm a big fan of the block schedule. There's a lot of love and support for it in my house. To a lot of the points that you all mentioned around reduced anxiety and more time and more just more community building and those opportunities. One thing that I'm thinking about, and I know this is another topic, but the block schedule is making me think about it, is like those skinny Wednesdays and thinking about the reset room and like when people have to do it in school suspension or whatever it's called now. I'm just thinking about those skinny Wednesdays as an opportunity for restorative repair because the blocks are shorter and they wouldn't be missing longer blocks if it was like a Tuesday or Thursday. So just something I'm thinking about with that.
We hadn't discussed that, but there's a lot of possibilities. I won't get into them because they would continue to just keep going down, really important, but rabbit holes right now. I think there's a lot of really cool possibilities that of what we can do with time in this schedule that is a little more hidden. But as we work with the WHEA and we enter kind of formal bargaining with them about any impact on their day, I'd really like to propose some really interesting intervention models with the teachers. During COVID, we had we didn't have to do any duties because the children were home, so there were no study halls or anything. But there were time and teachers held office hours and things that you would think of like a professor. And if there's opportunities for something cool like that where teachers could see kids, just in, you guys will be going to college soon, your professors will have office hours, drop-in times. I'd really like to see very interesting things with time, including your suggestion.
I think we're good, y'all. Thank you so
for
much.
being so receptive.
You just stay all night. All right. So we did that. Routine matters. Approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes from the January 20th, 2026 regular Board of Education meeting. Recommendation that the Board of Ed approves the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting of January 20th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Beautiful. All right, we're all good. Oh, go ahead.
You got to vote. All in favor?
Oh, yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we got it. Next, we have information and reports. Board members, any communications and reports or reports from other boards or organizations? I did have the opportunity to go to the suicide prevention training yesterday, and it had some great representation in there from your team, Paul, and the Bridge and West Hartford PD, and it was just a great training, and it was good to hear just about how our District 2 has just a comprehensive plan around that and supports for students. And I know, just on a personal note, that the supports that have been provided by our district have been really impactful in my home. So thank you so much, and the training was great. And if there's nothing else, there other information to discuss? Good. All right. Future business, announcement of future meeting dates. Next meeting is next Wednesday, a couple weeks from now, February 18th, 2026. Regular Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. right here. Tuesday, March 3rd, regular Board of Ed meeting, presentation of the superintendent's budget, 7 p.m. right here. Fun. Wednesday, March 11th, 2026, budget workshop, our first one, which will also be at 7 p.m. right here, Town Hall. And then March 17th, regular Board of Ed meeting. Wednesday, March 25th, 2026, BOE public hearing, that's 7 p.m. And then that will be followed by our second budget workshop. Tuesday, March 31st, regular Board of Ed meeting, adoption of the superintendent's budget. And that's it. Are there any requests for future agenda items?
If I may, I'll just make one point. For the listening public, I sent it to you. The town manager reached out, and they're planning to do community conversations once again. So myself and the board chair will be invited alongside the mayor and the town manager to present. Board members are certainly welcome to attend those. We're expecting that there might be 2 or 3 of them in mid-March, and the town will confirm those dates with me, and then I'll make sure to make them public, not only to you, but out to the community. We'll put it up on our website as well. And now those will be outreach right within the community like we did last year.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, important. And then lastly, do we have any comments from any visitors? Okay.
I have a few comments. It's
I'm sorry, can you say your name again? I think we have to say your name again.
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Layla Sky Williamson. I'm an 11th grader at Hall High School. A lot of my questions, or it's more of questions, are about block schedules. I feel like me and a lot of the student population could also agree that I think block schedules was kind of like a word of mouth in 2024 and not really established or really talked about or mentioned until this coming school year. And I am a graduate of the class of 2020 elementary school. So going from just a regular normal year and transitioning to middle school and going into block scheduling was really hard for me. And I know a lot of my junior class of 27 could agree. So just having that be initiated again our senior year, and it's supposed to be the year we graduate, and a lot of just chaos and stuff, but good chaos, hopefully. Just having that reenacted on us again, I don't think would be good for our personal health, and also for accommodations for people that attend Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts. I'm only able to take 5 classes a day, so the block scheduling as an ideal 86 minutes would only give me about 2 classes per day. So basically I would only take 4 classes on a ideal Wednesday schedule. So I'm not sure how you guys would accommodate those kids that go to Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts. I know it's a low population of us, but I go there because of the lack of support I got here in West Hartford Public Schools. And I am so glad I'm there, and I love it there as much as I do enjoy these schools. Also, the data collected from kids, also like coming back again, it was just kind of spurred on us, and it wasn't really talked about until this year, especially with the student panel last week. During community, it felt like I talked to a few other students about this. It was a lack of diversity, and it was a lack of how the downsides of block schedulings could be. Also, my question is, would we have like 5-minute breaks due to a very long schedule? And I know a lot of people can't really sit down or be focused for 86 minutes. Will there be an accommodation for like a 5-minute like class break or mind session? And that is all for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Did y'all want to say something? Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah. All right. So no request for future agenda items. We got our last comment. There's no executive session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Paul and team, for those comprehensive reports. And thank you, colleagues, for your patience tonight and just everyone. Some of the conversations are tough, but we sat through them. We ended with respect and dignity. And I love that for all of us. And motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.